The idiot Lord marries 5 beautiful goddesses. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 499, The Path to Get Her Back. Except for Alex's footsteps, everything seemed to stop for a moment. Before, Alex was the man who made the entire world tremble in fear with overwhelming strength and charisma. However, his arrogance never affected Alex. Alex stood in front of Kevin, who was sitting on the throne chair. Behind Alex appeared a throne made of rocks and he sat on it. Kevin stared at Alex. The moment he looked into Alex's eyes, the dark aura of death descended around him. Kevin felt as if his son's personality had taken a complete detour. If he were asked to describe Alex, he would say one line: a man with no ambitions but great potential. Although he had grown quickly, to his surprise, he was very lacking in charisma. He lacked will. Although it may not seem like it, his eyes were mostly dull and he felt that everything was annoying. Only when he was with his wife could a hint of life and desire be found in him. However, now, you could feel it. That indomitable will to conquer and destroy everything in his path. He had finally achieved what he lacked the most: the charisma of an emperor. Why did you cause such a fuss? Is this just to punish Shin? Such a simple thing kills a large number of people. Alex couldn't feel any displeasure from his tone, so he spoke indifferently. I just cut off some leeches that were sucking blood and doing nothing. Also, they were the ones who attacked first. Whether it was in front of the gates of those Supremas, I was attacked first, so it had all been self-defense. Kevin's lips twitched as he wondered what kind of self-defense tactic this was. So, what do you want now? Alex studied Kevin's expression and spoke. Do you know very well what I want? Open the path to the realm of darkness. I will bring it back with my own hands. I don't need your help to fight the other side, so just open the realm. Alex, whose voice had been cold until now, began to tremble a little. The realm of darkness can be said to be a separate world that is outside of the jurisdiction of the goddess. Since it was a world with its own laws, you couldn't just enter it whenever you wanted. To open the door requires a huge amount of resources along with the combined effort of the goddess and all of the peak power of each species. Kevin knocked on the armrest as he pondered carefully. Since you already knew about the realm of darkness, you might already know the price to open it. It was opened just recently and it's not plausible to open it again. An icy cold aura emitted from Alex. No matter what, he wasn't going to back out today. If they didn't open it willingly, he simply had to force them to open it. But it's not entirely impossible, Kevin said with a solemn expression. I have no right to decide this. Since you've proven yourself, I'll give you a chance. Whether you can force them to open it or not is entirely up to you. What do you mean? Treaty of Valorous. It's going to be held soon. Representatives of each species would be present there. They need to be convinced. Alex's eyes narrowed and he closed his eyes, feeling like he had taken another step towards freeing Raya. However, Kevin's next words surprised Alex. You need to get the position to represent Kinley there. I see. A mocking smile appeared on Alex's lips. Harold and Arkham's crown princes had already been determined, so they would surely be there, leaving only Kinley, whose crown prince is still undecided. As far as I know, the emperor can bring one of his guards along with the crown prince. Marshal Saint might go with you, so I need to defeat him or become crown prince. Kevin was slightly surprised to see Alex quickly come to a conclusion. Seeing that Kevin kept his lips sealed, Alex felt that his inference was correct. Taking a different approach, he had become strong rather quickly. If he had had any experience of this kind of strength, he might really be in a bad state. He didn't know how much stronger he had become, but he was sure of one thing. He can't defeat Marshal Saint and obtain the position. And he didn't know how long it would take him to get there, so his only option was the position of crown prince. Alex raised his head and looked at his father's solemn gaze. How do you want me to do it? Do you want me to become crown prince after making a bloodbath, or do you want me to take a different approach? I'm not even a prince now. The only way to get the throne is to go against the entire empire and throw it into chaos. No matter what option you take, there will always be a path of blood. However, I can help you a little by making your path less thorny, Kevin said with a sigh. Wait a moment, at your mansion? My mansion in Leonhardt? Alex asked with a confused expression. No, the one here, the 5th prince's mansion, the place you stayed before you were kicked out. Kevin didn't speak any further, so Alex stood up and walked away. The conversation was short, but at least it showed him the way to his goal. He didn't know how it would help, nor did he have many expectations. He just needed to do what he had been doing until now. That is to grow stronger and destroy everything he finds on the way. Who knows if his father might be preparing another trap for him. After all, he didn't receive any punishment for causing all this mess. But he can't run away anymore. The moment Rael was taken by her, his path was already formed. That is to conquer everything, because there is a small chance that he will have to go against the entire world. As Alex walked out, Kevin looked at his back and sighed. Children nowadays grow up so fast. Alex walked out of the Emperor's mansion and saw the soldiers dealing with the aftermath. The battle had destroyed the front and many buildings at the entrance. In addition, many people were injured and needed treatment. Alex decided to look for Athena first. Your Highness, HMMH, Alex saw a group of knights standing in an orderly manner. What do you wish? Alex's cold tone made them back off a bit. Your Highness, we are the knights who have accompanied you since birth and have now been asked to take care of you again. We have prepared the carriage for you. Alex was a little skeptical of their respectful behavior, but after pondering for a moment, he decided to see what was going on. Alex did not reject them and decided to observe them first to then come to a conclusion as to whether they were worth it or not. Okay, but I have to look for Athena first. Lady Athena had already been escorted to the 5th prince's mansion. Alex nodded and got into the carriage with a complicated feeling. The carriage started to move and the knights walked on their horses around the carriage. And the carriage headed towards the place that can be said to be his previous home. Home where he and Rhea spent their childhood together. Chapter 500, the place where he spent his childhood. There were 20 palaces and the entire place can be called an imperial city. All the palaces surround the people's palace where the emperor is staying, the most magnificent of all. That is where the core of power is located. Alex, who was heading towards the place that used to be his home, looked at the buildings in his path. Not bad, Alex muttered to himself. It may not look like it, but every building arranged here seems like part of a large formation. Soon, a white palace appeared in his vision. It was so grand that it would be more accurate to call it a castle than a palace. Somehow, Alex felt that the grandeur of this castle could even be compared to the people's palace. He began to feel that familiar feeling. As if they were waiting, many knights who were standing in front of the main gate of the palace came over and bowed their heads. When Alex walked down, an old man walked towards him. Your Highness. It's nice to have you here again. The old man's voice trembled, and not only he but also many of those who were there seemed excited. Who? Ah. The old man was startled and lowered his head. Please forgive me for my imprudence. I am Frey and I have been serving as your butler. Your Highness, I don't remember much. I've lost a lot of memory. Alex's words surprised many. Frey regained his composure and asked Alex to follow him. Follow me, Your Highness, I'll guide you inside. Alex nodded slightly and began to follow him, who walked politely. Frey looked like a frail and rather harmless-looking old man. However, behind the cover, Alex could see years of experience. Although he is currently at the legendary rank, his strength used to be at the mythic rank, as his eyes discovered. Perhaps he lost his power due to some injury. Alex thought of continuing to ask him about this later. Frey, who seems quite talkative, began to narrate the events while Alex was away. The fate of servants had always been tied to that of their masters. After Alex was disowned, they were unable to serve other masters, nor were any of them willing to do so. Fortunately, as if his intention had been understood, the emperor did not throw them out and asked them to maintain the place and work as usual. Your Highness, without you this place would have lost its austerity and become colorless, Friar said with a sincere smile. Alex, who had only been listening until now, opened his lips. Friar, I was just a fool and a fat pig. I don't understand anything. Why do you respect me so much? I can feel genuine happiness at my return from all of you. I am a person who has been ridiculed and mocked for being an idiot and has been labeled as a dark stigma by everyone, so why is everyone so happy to serve him? Or is it because I have grown stronger and returned with the glory? This has me confused. Frey stopped walking and turned around. Frey looked at Alex and shook his head with a soft smile. Your Highness, as I said before, the servant's fate is tied to that of their master. We servants feel proud of the master we serve. However, even though your master is a great man, that does not mean he is a great human being. We do not ignore others. We have always been abused and discarded if we do not comply with the master's demands. Our life has always been in the hands of the person we outlive. Even if we are not killed, we have been subjected to all kinds of humiliation, However, you have always been different. Even though you have a reputation for being a jerk, you have quite the insight into other people's emotions and problems and have helped many. You have always treated us with the utmost courtesy and respect, and now it is our job to help you navigate your path with everything we have. It may not seem like it, but the night stationed here are not weak compared to others. Although I can agree that there may be moles here and there, nevertheless, everyone here will do their best. You may find it hard to believe, but it would be easier if Lady Riya had been with us now that she knows us better. I wish Lady Riya had come with you. It breaks my heart to know that she was taken away, but we all believe that you will surely bring her back. I will, Alex murmured. Seeing the upright posture and sincere smile, fragments of memories began to appear in his head. Grandpa. Grandpa, I want to eat that. Grandpa, please take me. Grandpa, I want to go out. Grandpa, I wanted to take a piggy ride. I can't walk anymore. Frey frowned when he noticed Alex standing like a statue with a frozen expression, but he didn't know that Alex was trying to hide his embarrassment. Damn it, crying over a piggy ride at the age of 15, I should drown myself in a pinch of water. And why the fuck are these stupid flashbacks coming back now? Alex tried to clear his embarrassment and asked, what would have happened if I had been changed? What if my current self started abusing you and killing you at the slightest mistake? I've already slaughtered many knights along the way. I'm just a cold-blooded killer. Freycra opened her eyes and sized up Alex. Your Highness, you can't fool me. I've been with you since you were born and fed you with my own hands until Lady Riya took the job, so I know you better than anyone else. No matter how much you change, the core will always remain the same. You're the kind of person who treats kindness with kindness and hatred with more hatred. Alex's lips curved upwards. The more you walk, the more you get used to it. Alex thought as he walked through the hallways towards the second floor towards his room. The sight of several people rushing back and forth greeted him. As he approached the room, he heard the sound of familiar footsteps. A lady with agile movements like a cat pounced on him and hugged him tightly. Ow. So, you were here? Alex spoke and wrapped his hands around Athena's body that seemed to be shaking. She hugged him so tightly as if she was afraid that Alex would disappear if she let him go. What were you doing here? I take care of everything here. I often visit this place to play with you and help Riya sort things out, and I'm also quite familiar with them. So, I thought of settling things here before you come. I see. Thank you for taking care of it. Alex's broad chest and the warmth he radiated calmed her down. Athena, who had always been strong, tried to hold back her tears. She was truly scared. Afraid of losing the person who had been her light. Without him, she didn't know where she would be now. If you were to die, all meaning in her life would be lost. Since last month, she hadn't even blinked a moment while treating Alex. Unlike others, she didn't just rely on divinity to cure others. She had also learned various techniques and procedures ranging from acupuncture to herbalism, acupressure, Ayurveda, surgery, and many more. It can be said that she is a proper doctor who broadens her vision in treating others. And thank God, all that knowledge helped her keep Alex alive for a month. And everything became more hectic as Alex was moving around like crazy after waking up without paying attention to her or others. Alex stroked her hair gently and stood there for a moment. The servants around them blushed a little and quickly gave them some space and walked back. Alex saw drowsiness in Athena's eyes. You can sleep, Athena. Rest well and have sweet dreams. Alex's soft whispers filled with love and care sounded like lullabies in her ears. Her vision began to blur and without resisting it, she let herself fall asleep in his arms. Alex pulled Athena and carried her in a princess position to her room that had been prepared by Athena from before. Chapter 501, You Will Bear My Wrath. It was a bloody night. Soon the tales of the night that had shaken the entire power structure of the empire would reach everyone's ears. He knew that this would soon spread everywhere like wildfire. Surely people will be more interested in the origin of the story than the plot. After all, fights between family members happened like an everyday meal in the imperial castle. However, this was the first time that people were slaughtered like sheep. And Hex, who would be the center of it all, would become the laughingstock of the entire world. His eyes, which were filled with ambition and arrogance, were nowhere to be seen. Sitting around the rubble, he watched as his mansion burned. He had built this place with a lot of hard work to step out of his family's shadow and cut out the moles as much as he could. Hex, who was known as a miracle magician, had the support of Kinley's magic tower. Casualties, the hoarse, bewitching voice made the person in front of him tremble. Your Highness, 14 legendary realm knights, 9 legendary ranked mages, and 38 transcendent ranked miscellaneous. The informant's lips trembled as he recited the information. I dare not speak of the mythic ranked ones. Hex bit his lip until it bled and looked at the bloody moon. Leave. The informant quickly left, leaving behind Hex, whose anger began to flare. Damn it! Damn it! How dare you do this to me, you filthy bastard! How dare you! Hex screamed at the top of his lungs and pulled at his hair in pain and agony. He caressed the spot on his chest where Alex kicked him and began to scratch it. He felt disgusted and tried to scrape the flesh on his chest where Alex put his feet. Blood dripped from his chest, leaving twisted wounds. The memories of being beaten by Alex made him nauseous. Sean, who had the support of Kinley's night squad, had always been at odds with him. The magic tower and the army night squad had always kept each other in check. With Shen's help, Hex had managed to control a regiment of knights and created his own army that could rival them. However, the balance was broken during the war, when Sean's power supply was cut off. And Hex set out to cut down the remaining grass and finally step onto the throne. He was so close to fulfilling his dream. He just needed a little push and to seize it. However, just one night, and just one man shattered his dream and everything. He appeared like a storm and destroyed his men like they were made of paper. He lost the mythical ranks and many legendary rank knights. Perhaps he could rise up, but he knew that it wasn't the end. Because with Shen in his hands, Hex might really be in trouble. People might think Shen is a fool. A weak and greedy bastard with no brains, but only he knows the truth. Within that chubby look hides a cunning man with a great vision. He only lost his composure when it came to matters concerning Christina. As he thought about what might happen next, Alex's voice began to echo in his ears and haunt him. This is just the beginning of your despair. You will drown in despair, endless despair. You will cry and beg for death, and even if you die, what will await you after death will be nothing but despair. No, Hex roared angrily and punched the pillar beside him. It won't be me but you, despair. I will show you true despair. Hex, who was talking to himself, suddenly felt an ominous feeling beside him. Hex didn't need to look beside him to know the man's identity. My second prince, you don't look well. Sometimes I wonder what you'd be doing now if you had accepted our offer. An ominous voice echoed in his mind. Yes, I will accept your offer. Help me win the throne and I will keep my word. So you finally agreed. Fine, Helly, it would have been more fun if you had listened to me earlier. Hex looked at the hooded figure who had an amused smile on his lips. I also want you to help me with something. And what is that, second prince? Hex muttered weakly and smiled upon receiving the confirmation. In a dark room where the moonlight barely hides through the window, a pair of red eyes stared at the bed where 4 women were sleeping peacefully. After putting Athena to sleep, Alex went out to find the other 3. His heart was touched upon seeing their sleepless and tired-filled faces. While he was unconscious, they had worked day and night for the past month organizing many things for him. They have taken care of him quite well, and since he had already woken up, it was time to rest for a while. So by the time everything was over, they had fallen asleep yesterday and had not woken up until now. While everyone was sleeping, Alex was sitting in the rocking chair while contemplating many things. While his body was rocking back and forth due to the movement of the tea, his eyes would fall asleep from time to time. However, he didn't dare to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes and tried to sleep, the terrible nightmare of losing his wife started appearing again and again. His nightmare had turned into fear, and he was now afraid that his wives would be taken away from him if he fell asleep. The moment he fell asleep, Ridia's tear-stained and misery-filled face appeared in his mind. So he simply sat there with a blank expression. However, that didn't mean he was wasting his time. He became more familiar with his new power. He was walking a path that no one had ever walked before, and he didn't even know its end. He was also worried about facing an obstacle that he couldn't solve. He had been ignorant of many things. He had always thought that his soul was strong because of the memories of his past life and because he had been trained by the goddess. But he was wrong. His soul had always been strong. The proof was the presence of that being within the soul. It was just that his soul kept pace with the body. It's like a gas that when needed can be contained in a small reed and at the same time can fill the entire room if left free. When he changed his power structure, his soul expanded crazily, becoming stronger than before. Alex sighed. I just received the answer about the strength of my soul when the new question of who that person is appears. What worried him the most were the man's last words. He said the outside world seems fun. What did he mean? As Alex thought about it over and over again, the only thing he could think of was that that person might have been locked away in his soul or something, wanting to come out. Or maybe it was one of those from his previous shelf who, unable to find any emotion, locked away his personality and memories just waiting to appear. Alex thought it might be because their gaze seemed rather dull and was quite similar to his own. In fact, Alex often gets bored when fighting with others. When he decided to go all out, he knew that the Supreme One might not pose much of a threat, however it might be one of the few times he had felt excited. He never intended to kill the members of the royal family. It was just a gamble to get those old men out of their shell, and thankfully he succeeded. If it wasn't for Ria's absence, he would have thoroughly enjoyed those moments. Alex snapped out of his thoughts and looked at his wife sleeping peacefully. Every time he looked at them, he missed Ria's presence. He could still remember the words of the goddess of wisdom. Cut off those who need to be cut off. Discard what needs to be discarded. A king must never show any weakness. You were sorely lacking in that aspect. Words and knowledge cannot fill that gap. The amount of practical experience he had can be said to be insignificant. He was just an ordinary human in his previous life, and although he learned many things, he was unable to use them properly. It was the difference between knowing theory and doing practical work. Unless you experience things for yourself, you will never grow. He thought that if he kept a low profile without interfering with others, people wouldn't unnecessarily seek trouble for him. So unless necessary, he doesn't provoke them much. However, some people mistook his indifference for his inability to fight back. The same went for those people from the Dark Realm. If they knew a little about him, they would never have dared to provoke him. They've touched on something they should never have. Alex panted heavily, his gaze burning with hatred. What fueled his anger even more was that coincidentally, Ava's true reincarnation was none other than Ria. Catherine might look like Ava, but Ria was Ava. And she failed in her attempt to protect Ava for the second time. Now that he knew this, Alex wondered if Ria knew about the past. It's possible that she knew about the past and knew his true identity as the god of death who arranged his fate, and Ria also carried his power. However, Alex can only be patient for now while Ria may be suffering. This stuck in his heart more than anything else. You will all pay the price for your recklessness. Just wait and prepare, you will endure my wrath. Chapter 502, Royal Family Reunion. The sun's rays shone down, illuminating the room. Under the sun's rays, the wooden panel of the portrait was shining. Inside the portrait, a little boy was sitting on the chair while a woman stood behind him with a loving smile. Her refreshing smile reflected her happy state and enhanced her beauty. Alex calmly looked at Ria and spoke. I wonder how the painter is able to draw you. Still, this picture of you doesn't even come close to your true self. Then his gaze fell on his younger self. His body was rather rounded and looked like a swollen ball. However, he had to admit one thing. As Athena said, he seems rather calm. He stepped forward and caressed Ria's face in the portrait. Soon, very soon. Wait for me. Knock, 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 come in. Alex said with a displeased expression. Your Highness, all the ladies have gathered. I see. Take the stacks of papers with you. From now on I will devour everything. Alex tilted the cup in front of him and silently opened his mouth to his wife sitting in front of him. Hearing her words, the image of Alex devastating his opponent came to Athena's mind. It was the image she could never forget in her life. Order Leonhart's forces to prepare. We will also move the League of Shadows. It is time to reap all that we have sown. What are you going to do first? Catherine asked. We will collect evidence from the kingdoms attacking us. Shall we suppress them or wage war on them? Yvonne asked. Neither. Alex shook his head and spoke. There is no need to waste manpower on these mistakes anymore. We will assassinate their chieftains and cause the kingdoms to fall into chaos. You know what to do next. Then you are going to use the League of Shadows to kill them, Christina muttered as she thought of something. Alex smiled as she shook her head and clapped her hands. A knight walked in before everyone's curious gaze and knelt down. Davidson, it's time to test your loyalty to me. We are prepared to prove our loyalty, Your Highness. We will tread through fire and water for you. Seeing the curious looks on the other three's faces, Athena explained to them, this is Davidson, captain of the 5th Division Knights under Alex's command. The kingdoms range from level 4 to level 1. Form a squad of legendary ranks and do it within a week. The sooner you do it, the better. Yes, Your Highness, Davidson said with a bow. Did you get the list? Give it to Christina. Davidson nodded and handed Christina stacks of papers. Christina took it and scanned the names written on the list. Her eyes lit up in surprise. This one, in 3 days, they'll all be gathered. Christina's hands trembled and she closed her eyes that were shining with happiness. Her squad that she had built with blood and sweat was abandoned and scattered. She tried to search for them but found it difficult to locate them all alone. When did you start looking for them? Ever since I arrived at the capital. In fact, I found them quite a while ago, but I was wary of other eyes and refrained from making any big moves. Christina frowned as she realized something and asked, then wouldn't it be troublesome if I do this now? They were dispersed under the Emperor's order. Aren't we going against him by doing this? I don't care anymore. What can she do now? Rather than me, they should be worried, because now I will ruthlessly cut down anyone who opposes me, and secondly, I believe things will become clear tomorrow when everyone meets with the Emperor. Soon the tides will turn. If you are unable to adapt to the circumstances, you have only yourself to blame. It is time to utilize everything we have built up so far. People's Palace in the center of the Imperial Palace. About a dozen people were gathered in a huge audience hall. Sean looked at the people gathered here with heavy eyes. It was the first time they were gathered like this. Sean, after getting married, moved his family out of the capital to keep his family safe from the wolves. When the fights happened here, he was close to the borders and he was honestly very shocked by all of this. He knew that one day Alex might explode, but she came so first that it surprised him greatly. In Sean's eyes were reflected the figures of men and women with golden hair like her. It was more like a gathering of competitors than brothers and sisters. To aspire to the throne it is necessary to go through a succession ceremony, and recently, the second Princess Ivine passed the ceremony. Since SHEN was not interested in the throne, Ivine would surely monopolize all the power of the Razorford family and begin to spread her influence. Only the third Princess Rosalie and the fourth Princess Alicia remained to go through the ceremony. He didn't know what they would do in the future. The people who inherited Stan's blood have already suppressed the limits of strength and had immense ability. At birth each of them would have an awakening ceremony to awaken the blood of God. It was said that Alex failed at that and was treated like an outcast since he didn't have the blood of God. That symbolizes Stan. Thinking about all the drama that was happening in his family made him bitter. I'll have to protect my family from these wolves. I can't allow these people to harm them as each of them are monsters that could take the lives of others without hesitation. There is no humanity in them. The greed for power makes people lose their meaning. He knew this very well because he was one of them too. Drunk with power, human life meant nothing to him until he met her. She gave his life meaning and made him understand that there was something greater than power. With a sigh, he observed everyone. SHEN and William looked down, however he was surprised to see that Hex looked calm as always. Long time no see, brothers. Why does everyone have gloomy eyes and macy hair? Haven't you slept well? At that moment, a woman with long blonde hair hanging down her back opened her mouth with a smile. First Princess Leia. Sister Leia, you still have that habit of touching things you shouldn't touch, don't you? William muttered with a smile. I'm just worried about my brother's well-being. Everyone knows what happened 3 days ago. The entire capital was in an uproar, the people's hearts were uneasy. That's why, as the elder sister, it's my job to take care of my siblings who are at the center of all this. Are you just going to talk about those dirty things that don't mean much? Hex spoke with a smile. The two of them looked at each other with calm eyes, as a greeting like that wasn't a provocation at all. But deep within their eyes was disgust for each other. I heard you lost a few people, Leia asked with an expression as if she knew something. You really had enough courage to ask about my business. They're just some insects that lost their lives. Since they're not capable enough to perform their duty well enough, it's a good thing they all died. Hex crossed his legs and spoke with a sneer. Leia glanced at Sean, who gave her a look that told her not to drag her into this. Alicia, who was standing at the side, shed cold sweat as she wondered why a gentle lamb like her was forced to attend a tiger meeting. Everyone was summoned and asked to attend no matter what. She had to take a vacation and came here in a farce. My, what a nice atmosphere, Ivine muttered to herself, giving a round of applause. This guy is the shame of the Stan family. Just by being here he's undermining the family's honor, Ivine said with a venomous look. He doesn't have God's blood, so I don't understand how he became so strong, William said with a confused expression. Besides, he has broken several laws and attacked the prince. He is just a king of a small kingdom. What right does he have to touch us? I want him to be punished according to the law. Ivine shouted and looked at Hex. Hex's eyes that were calm became intense. The loss he suffered was heartbreaking. If he had to be punished, he would have been already. And since he isn't, it seems that Royal Father has other plans, William said. I don't know. I just wish for him to disappear from sight, Ivine complained as she clenched her fist. She had come here to take a look at the bastard who dared to harm her mother. He is too strong for you guys to handle, Leia added. No matter how much strength he has, he's alone. What can he do alone? I don't even know how long he'll last. He'll soon find himself in a pit surrounded by people above his throat. Shyan, who had kept his lips sealed until now, spoke with a smile. That's what I'm curious about as well, a voice echoed in his ears. At this, people turned their heads towards the door of the auditorium where the voice was heard. Let's see what I can do and how long it lasts. There stood Alex entering the audience room with a sinister smile. Chapter 503, Royal Family Reunion 2. Alex looked at the people gathered in the audience hall. People looked to his sides with eyes filled with interest, surprise, and shock. Except for Hex, William, and Shyan, others saw him after a long time. While for Ivine and Rosalind, it was their first meeting with him. I never thought people like you could set foot in here, Ivine said with a frown. Ivine cursed Alex, however the stillness reflected in his eyes was something that gave her the creeps. And everyone could feel the temperature drop drastically along with the eerie feeling surrounding them. Although Shyan had a blank expression, her legs began to tremble. You're late, Alice spoke softly and stood by Alex's side. Alex patted her head affectionately and said, I had work to do. Who do you think you are, Bug? How dare you be late when we were early? Ivine shouted, shocking everyone. You must be careful with this matter. Unfortunately, everyone gulped. Hex's eyes fluttered as his interest was piqued, wondering what was going to happen. Alex glanced at them and, passing between them, took a seat. He thought it was pointless to argue with people blinded by arrogance, however, if he let it slide, they would probably think he could easily trample on him. Alex looked at the empty throne as he rested his chin on the palm of his hand as he sat comfortably. Turning his gaze towards Ivine, Alex spoke coldly, the last person who dared to raise their voice and bark at me is now resting in peace without a grave to place their body in. Alex then tilted his head and looked at Ivine, who flinched as she met those blood-red eyes. Ha, what joke? You think you can touch me? I'm of royal blood. You'll be killed before you know it. Alex tilted his gaze towards Hex and chuckled. Do you know the name of the person who died at my hands? What does this have to do with me? I might be an insect like you, Ivine said. Alex laughed as if he heard a funny joke, which angered Ivine even more. Hey, why are you laughing? Maybe you're one of those self-centered girls who dare to address their ancestors as insects? Who knew? At those words, people's gazes focused on him. Is this a joke? Sean asked with a surprised expression. What do you mean by that, brother? Alice asked with a surprised expression. I don't joke about the people I've killed. Let me tell you something funny. A smile appeared on Alex's lips. Sling Razorford, known for his skill with his sword, died even before he could hold his sword. His pathetic cry for mercy and help still lingered in my ears. It was nice to see, Alex said and leaned his head back on the chair. Stop lying, Ivine shouted. How dare you lie about our ancestors? You? How can a puny ant like you kill our ancestor who is at the supreme rank? Who are you trying to fool? Alex shook his head and smiled. People say ignorance is bliss, but sometimes ignorance is the reason you die. You dare to mock our ancestors? I will kill you, you bastard. Ivine, please calm down a bit, Leia shouted as she saw Ivine's murderous glare. Yes, stop this farce, Sean said and stepped forward towards Ivine. Today I will cut you into pieces, Ivine shouted and his pressure descended on Alex. Die, you bastard, Ivine roared as he raised his sword to attack. Finally something to kill my boredom. It was at that moment, Alicia, who was sitting beside Alex, looked to the side with a questionable look, however her mouth dropped open as she watched Alex disappear before her eyes. Fuck him. An eerie sound echoed from the center of the courtroom. Ivine's eyes widened and her body lost strength as she felt a tight grip around her neck. In front of Ivine, Alex with her languid gaze remained standing as she grabbed her neck as if she was going to kill her. As if cold water had been poured on her, the courtroom instantly fell silent. With their mouths shut due to the unexpected situation, no one could notice as Alex approached Ivine and grabbed her by the neck. Leave her alone, Shyan shouted with fearful eyes. Alex leaned his gaze towards Shyan, whose body was trembling madly. Sister Ivine, Please tell me, do you want to die? If you're in a hurry, I can grant you a painless death." Alex tightened his grip, causing her to choke. Bubbles began to appear in her mouth with a slight gurgling sound. "Alex, don't kill her or you'll be in trouble," Sean shouted. "His Majesty the Emperor is entering." Thud. Ivine fell to the ground. With a loud shout, the audience door opened and a man full of majesty entered with a straight gesture full of nobility. "I see you, His Majesty the Emperor. I greet you, Your Majesty." The people stopped what they were doing and bowed their heads towards Kevin. Alex had already let go of Ivine, who swallowed his complaints. The overwhelming charisma emanating from the old man's entire body naturally weighed down on everyone. "What is this?" Along the way, the Emperor fixed his gaze on Ivine's neck, on which were red traces of grasping fingers. His question was answered by silence for a moment, and then Ivine pointed at Alex. "Father, he assaulted me. He broke the decorum of the royal family and attacked me, Your Majesty." Everyone's gaze turned to Alex, who bowed her head. "Everyone present here can verify my claim. She was the one who drew the sword first. Then tell me, what should I do? Should I just stand there and watch as she cuts me down with her sword? Is that true?" the Emperor asked in a displeased tone. Hearing his cold voice, everyone nodded slightly. He clicked his tongue and, ignoring everyone, walked past them and headed to the throne. None of those present moved their heads or kept them lowered, except for Alex. In their eyes, the surge of heavenly power was faintly shining and glowing. At this moment, Sean opened his mouth. "How have you been? Do I seem to be in a good mood?" Kevin replied with a snort. Knowing that these words were directed at everyone, they simply kept their mouths silent and bowed their heads even further. The atmosphere was as cold as can be. At this moment, Hex spoke in a worried tone. "Your Majesty, I implore you to make decisions on behalf of the Empire. The winds that blew that night caused the embers to spiral out of control. You must address the grievances of the soldiers who lost their lives under the sword of Alex's tyranny. All of them were doing their duty and were senselessly killed. If we don't punish them, we'll become the laughingstock of the entire world. What about the laws? Once the law is broken, people take it as an example and then do whatever they want." Kevin touched the armrest and looked at Alex. "What do you have to say about this, Alex? Let me hear what you think." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 504, Deciding the Crown Prince. Seeing the Emperor ask Alex, doubts appeared on the faces of the princes and princesses. Because they couldn't guess what he was thinking, Alex took out some mana crystals and placed them before the Emperor. "Your Highness, these contain the evidence of some crimes committed by Shen. If you take a closer look at the contents, you'll know to what extent Shen had wreaked havoc on the western borders." Alex's words were a bucket of cold water for Hex. "I just wanted to have a nice chat with Shen. However, when I confronted him with all of this, I was attacked out of nowhere. It's all self-defense. Do you think we're naive?" Ivine and Shian spoke at the same time. Seeing them argue like this, Kevin sighed. Wow. Ivine's body stiffened and he stared at the Emperor. His eyes were as dark as the night sky, filled with dissatisfaction. "Do you know what your mistake is?" Ivine stammered, wondering what she had done to make the Emperor so openly condemn her. "I know," she said, biting his lip. "No, you don't." Ivine's lips opened and closed, but no words came out. "Speak, what did you do wrong?" Ivine tightly clenched his hem and said, "I shouldn't have drawn a sword in the audience hall." "Drawing the sword isn't wrong," Kevin muttered and looked at everyone's confused expression. "It's your inability to judge the situation and draw conclusions. You weren't able to judge your opponent, nor were you able to defeat him." Look at Alex. Once he started to take on everyone, he continued forward without taking a step back, no matter who appeared in front of him. Remember one thing, in life, there's no turning back. Your decisions and actions have consequences and you can't deviate from them. Even after being pressured from all sides, he won while all of you lost. You couldn't defeat your enemy with your own hands, and you dare to bring up this matter here asking for my help. Bang! Kevin stomped on the ground. The platform beneath the throne cracked and a powerful aura forced everyone to bow their backs. "This is why we don't have a crown prince until now." He snorted and shouted. "We have met after a long time, and I know that you don't like all this, so let's get straight to the point. I have called here to announce that Alex's status will be restored. From now on the position of 5th prince of the royal family will be returned to Alex. But father, he doesn't have the blood of God, Ivan shouted. Shut your mouth, Kevin's voice filled with commotion echoed in the room. His words resounded like thunder and caused strong gales to surge from him. I didn't ask for your opinion, his blood hadn't awakened at that time. The sudden awakening of the blood of the gods might be the reason why he obtained this sudden strength. Everyone was drenched in cold sweat and even forgot to breathe for a moment. The real reason I called you today is to discuss the successor, and I'm not asking for your opinion, it's almost decided. At that moment all the family members raised their heads at once. Because it was so sudden. However, the emperor's words that followed were shocking enough to wipe the minds of everyone present. A mischievous light flashed in Kevin's eyes that gave Alex chills. The moment Alex realized it, he felt a bad feeling in his heart. I wish for Alex to be my successor for now. A bombshell dropped from the emperor's mouth which startled even Alex. The inside of the audience hall was so quiet that even the sound of breathing could be heard. Is he high after taking some drugs, or did I have some secret supporter behind my back who did something with this man behind my back? Alex thought that he might have regained his position as the 5th prince, but he spoke of being the crown prince when his position had just been restored. Are you pushing me straight into murky waters? Alex faced the emperor who was staring at him. Things were getting rather interesting. If you were to be appointed successor, you would be closer to the emperor than anyone else, at least in terms of legitimacy, regardless of your qualities or power. But the question is, how will others handle it? The backlash would be quite large in one way or another. It is Alex who has to shoulder all of this, making him the target of many. Yes, this was a help that he cancelled, but it was also a test for him. Surprisingly, the first to face this was none other than Leia. Your Majesty, can you tell me the reason for all of this? An heir cannot rise to the throne on his own. He needs support and help. And as far as I know, he has none. Your Majesty, tell me you are joking, Hex asked with a solemn expression because things had gone further than he expected. Everything is useless in the face of true strength. You don't know that yet. You haven't seen his true strength, that's why you speak like that. Kevin gave a helpless smile that didn't fit the situation and said, he can slaughter Supreme like a pig now, so what support are you talking about? What? Leia shouted as everyone's expression turned pale and they all looked at Alex. Even Alicia was shocked to hear this and wondered what kind of monster her brother had become. Then tell me, what support are you talking about? The Emperor of Arkham is in the Saint Realm while the Emperor of Herald is at the Supreme rank, and here your brother has already surpassed the head of 2 empires. Indeed, no matter what happens, Alex should be punished even if his actions were justified. However, since neither party was in the wrong, it was inevitable that a clash would occur. Sly on Razorford's Supreme rank expert, died unable to withstand a single attack from Alex. His strength had even surpassed that of the Supreme, and only the Supreme Lord could keep him in check. Now tell me, should I push him further until there is mutual destruction or find a way to resolve it? And telling you the truth, he is the best heir I can think of right now, unless you can surpass him. However, just because he was appointed as the official successor did not necessarily mean that he would become the next emperor. I can't believe it. Your Majesty, don't you know what position he is in now? How are they treating him and how do others perceive this? William spoke, and Leia, who was standing next to him, broke the composure she had been holding and looked at Alex with an inexplicable look. I too have always followed my father's will, but this time I cannot accept it. He is too young for all this, and even if he is strong, this is going to be a huge burden for him. Rosalind asked in a calm voice. May I ask why you chose Alex? Strength cannot be the only criteria for this. You cannot rule an empire with strength alone, because I judged him most suitable to be the next emperor among you. The royal family's faces were even more distorted by Kevin's unconventional words. I can't understand what's going on. It was you who pulled him out of nowhere, and now you're the one who accepted him easily, and now you're even elevating his status as crown prince. Why? Ian asked with a frustrated expression. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Kevin clicked his tongue and said, if you could have understood that much, then you would have already been appointed as the next crown prince. But, I wish you had that much head. Ian stepped forward before Kevin. I still can't accept this. Hex expressed his anger towards Kevin. However, Kevin's eyes were as calm as the peaceful sea. A word said once is never repeated. It was his iron rule that he followed until now, and it will be that way in the future. And that was known to everyone. I've already made up my mind. This is already irreversible, Leia thought and shook her head. I will follow His Majesty's will. What? Everyone stared at her, mouths agape. Instead, at everyone's bewildered gaze, she said, I have a suggestion. Tell me. At those words, Leia's eyes turned to Alex. Everyone knows that this is too sudden for everyone to acknowledge and may create unrest and chaos throughout the Empire. Even with us, the backlash from other members such as nobles, advisors, and knights will be huge. There will be endless doubts and dissatisfaction. Then why don't we give him a chance to prove himself, a chance to prove himself as a successor? Kevin muttered and spoke. How do you do that? At this, Hex spoke with a sinister expression. Why don't you just fix the plague that's slowly eating away at the Empire? Hex's eyes drew a black arc and he spoke. The northern area is in chaos. The dark elves and demons are slowly pushing the elves away while keeping us in check. War could break out at any moment. Then why don't you solve the problems by meditating? The northern area is facing a huge crisis. A large number of troops were stationed here to keep the demons and dark elves at bay. However, small skirmishes occur every day. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers are dying every day, and many people are missing. The situation is getting worse by the day. There is a shortage of food and insufficient funds. Kinley had spent a great deal of resources to reclaim the western part, and now, if anything happened to the northern part, there would be a huge calamity. If Alex was unable to properly manage the northern borders, all the blame would fall on him, and who knows if he could return alive from that place under Demon's watch. It was quite a sinister plan on Hex's part. However, it all depends on his father's decision. If you have to become emperor, you have to resolve it anyway, otherwise the emperor's stability would be in danger. He might receive massive support if he resolves this, and he will be able to prove his qualifications. I don't think it's a bad idea. I agree with Brother Hex. Everyone except Sean, Leia, and Alice agreed. Although this was suggested to him, he didn't imagine that Hex would push Alex this far, nor did he think that his father would agree to it. There was interest in Kevin's eyes and he looked at Alex wondering what he would do. At the same time, everyone's gaze focuses on Alex. Alex massaged his forehead as he somehow expected this to happen. However, it was okay. It's time for the world to know fear. The fear of having Alex as an enemy. I accept your proposal. Chapter 505, The Sword of Annihilation. While others were surprised to see Alex accept this so easily, Hex tried to stop the wide smile from showing on his face. Kevin watched Alex's facial expression and said, I'm glad you're prepared to take on the challenge, but it's not as easy as it seems. To take control of the entire northern region, you need the support of the council. Others could have easily taken care of it, but you have no support and can't even appear in the council. Alex thought for a moment. The council is like an assembly of representatives. While the emperor created the laws, it was the council that made sure to implement them after thorough checking. The princes and princesses who head the council need 10 nobles to support them, and in that way, he or she is their representative. However, Alex, who didn't even have a foundation in politics, would surely encounter trouble. If he can't appear in front of the council, the decision would be delayed. If this is delayed, he won't be able to head north to finish things off. If he can't finish the troublesome matters in the north, he won't be able to prove his legitimacy to the crown, and then he wouldn't be able to represent Kinley during the treaty and present the proposal to open the gates to the Dark Realm. The council will meet in 3 days, and then it will take place next month. Kevin muttered as he saw Alex's train of thought. Alex looked at him solemnly. I see. I'll try to find a way. Kevin nodded. Each prince or princess, after the ceremony, would head to the storehouse to choose their weapon. The chief chamberlain will show you the way. You may all leave, Kevin shouted and walked back. After him, everyone began to retreat. Ivine gave Alex a sneer while Hux looked at him with an inexplicable look. Leia walked up to Alex and nodded slightly. Alex, I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted you to step aside and not get hurt, but if you persist in the task, I will have no choice but to accept the appointment. However, I never thought Hex would play like this. Leia nodded slightly and left. There was no need for further words, nor did she ask for forgiveness. Alex, let's talk for a while after you clear things up, Sean said and patted Alex. He left, leaving Alex and Alice behind in the huge audience room. Brother, are you going to run for the crown? It's dangerous, Alice said with teary eyes as she thought about coaxing Alex to take a step back. Alex understood her thoughts and patted her. I'm sorry, Alex, I have to intervene, because this is the only way to get Relia back. Otherwise, Alice could understand Alex's words and tightened the hem of her dress as she cursed the cruel fate for forcing her brother. After passing a test, each member of the royal family would be given the chance to visit the Dream Realm. It was a secret storehouse created years ago when Kinley was founded. This was the place where the imperial family stored their treasures from thousands of years ago. It exists somewhere underground in the People's Palace and was a place where only Stan's blood relatives could enter. Alex headed to the place under the guidance of the Chief Chamberlain. From now on, you will have to go alone. Please make a good choice. Please put a drop of blood into this magic circle. The Chief Chamberlain bowed his head politely and stepped aside. Alex nodded, making a small cut that dripped blood onto the magic circle. The magic circle flashed and began to shine brightly. Alex's entire body was devoured by the light, and a creaking sound could be heard coming from the door. Alex pushed open the door and entered. As soon as he passes through the door and goes down to the basement, a thick fog fills the place. Alex felt that the fog was quite abnormal and had the power to greatly harm the body. The realm seemed to be meaningless before him, however his body seemed to resist the effect. Does that mean anyone except Stans would be affected by it? After taking a few steps through the fog, Alex's eyes saw the stars softly shining from the ceiling. Like the Milky Way, a long path of stars appeared before him as if it was all a dream. Another huge stone door blocked Alex's vision. The stone door was covered in ruins and a barrier that exuded a strong pressure. This place had too many security measures. Alex saw another circle and dropped another drop of blood. The barrier receded and the doors opened. What appeared before Alex was a sea of treasures beyond his imagination. Alex, who stepped through the door, heard a cheerful voice. Welcome to the Dream Realm, a place where your dream comes true. Alex turned around and saw a girl with golden hair and golden eyes looking at him. An angel, Alex murmured in surprise. I am just a projection of the angel granted to Emperor Shellidus in the year. Okay, I understand, please stop. Alex tried to stop his dizziness after hearing her say thousands of words. I'm Ella, the warehouse manager. You're Alex von Stan, right? I didn't think you'd ever come in here. I'm really surprised. Alex's lips twitched. You shouldn't look down on people so much, Alex snorted. First of all, congratulations on being able to regain your status. Is this your first time doing so? No, I've been here countless times. Ella's smile faded and her brows furrowed. Huh? How can that be? I remember that you've never appeared here. Since you know that this is my first time, why are you asking me this stupid question? Alex spoke with a glare. Ella pouted with a curt expression. It had been a long time since she'd had a visitor, and she just wanted to talk for a bit. She coughed to clear her embarrassed expression. This is the best treasure trove in the world, where you'll find treasures beyond what Prince Alex had imagined. Every weapon here can cause a disaster and the least valuable treasure can easily supplement a nation's budget. However, let me remind you of something. The things here have been sought after from the past to the present to the future, each with their myths and legends, so the weapons choose you, not the other way around. If you're not chosen by a weapon, you can't take it no matter what. Alex nodded and began searching around. The only good weapon he had was the Dudwake greatsword. He initially used swords made of steel which were replaced by swords from the Lockhart collection, however, all of them fall short. So far he hadn't found anything that could accompany him forever. Alex walked past piles of weapons. Dragon spear. Heavenly sword. Satanic dagger. Stan's spear. The weapons began to vibrate as Alex walked past, surprising Ella. What the fuck? Every weapon you go through wants you to choose it. It's the first time I've seen something like that. It's because I'm special, Alex muttered. I've never seen a narcissist like you. And why don't you choose between any of them? I don't feel like choosing them, Alex replied indifferently. Each of them could make a great weapon, but what Alex needs is his intuition to scream. Still, Alex's eyes sparkled at the sight of the weapons as he checked them over while passing over Ella, who was babbling beside him. Alex decided to take a few weapons to try out. Sword of Light. It was a glowing sword that seemed to be good for those with light elements, so Alex reached out his hands towards the handle. However, at that moment, the entire space around Alex began to vibrate. Not just the space, but all the things here also began to vibrate strongly, shaking the entire place. What's going on? She spoke with a puzzled tone and closed her eyes, trying to figure out the source of the anomaly. Her eyes swept across the entire place and finally settled on the bottom. Her face turned pale and her eyes shone with disbelief. Along with a blank voice coming out, the space in front of Alex that was covered in weapons began to split apart. The weapons began to slowly move as if they were welcoming the weapon emperor. Through the split sea of weapons, Alex saw a dark gray spot. A sword shrouded in darkness greeted him. The place around him was so dark that no one would notice his presence. From the sword to the handle, everything exuded a sinister feeling and seemed to absorb all the light that existed around it. Alex's heart began to beat rapidly as if he was in love. What is that? Sword of annihilation? But how can that be? Seeing Alex's confused look, Ella explained. You might not even know this. The first emperor of Kinley built this castle on top of some ancient ruins. He found this sword in the ancient ruins and was fascinated by the blade but couldn't pull it out. So, you're saying that this sword has been trapped here for an unknown period and an imperial castle was built around it? Ella nodded. Alex walked over to the sword of annihilation. It might be dangerous. Don't do this, Ella screamed and raised her hand to stop Alex. But the next moment, she could see a series of black light eruptions coming from the sword of annihilation. Darkness erupted and began to swallow the entire place in the dream realm. Chapter 506, The Sword of Annihilation 2. The 8-star black star on Alex began to flicker. The sword began to vibrate and scatter black light in all directions like a puppy wagging its tail in joy when it meets its owner. Ella was stunned for a moment as her vision darkened due to the rich energy emanating from the sword. The sword had just taken hold of its owner but released a force that frightened her. Soon after, the black light was absorbed by Alex's entire body. Together with the sword, she felt herself becoming one with the darkness and was able to manipulate the darkness more greedily than before. The sword complemented her power and increased her synergy with the darkness. It's a very good weapon, but it's rotting away here. What a shame. I'll take it. Alex opened his mouth and showed the sword to Ella, who looked at him with a lost look. Yes, Ella nodded with a half-confident look. For an angel who knew something about the world, her surprised face was quite amusing for Alex to see. The sword chose its master and she had no right to stop it. However, the sword had been there for centuries with an unknown history, so she didn't know much about it. Alex, who was quietly observing the sword, began to smile. Seeing that strange smile, Ella was puzzled for a moment. The sword controlled him. It seems I'll have a chance to use this. Alex smiled and walked back. I'll see you again. She stared at Alex's back as he walked out in a good mood. Enough. You can kill if you have to. Har. The commander of the Blue Knights guarding the outskirts of the prison shouted to the knights as he watched the place where the battle was taking place. Following his instructions, the blue-armored knights rushed towards the intruders. However, the knights were thrown in all directions without being able to stop the intruder. Aha. 4. The knights flew through the sky like birds and all of them gradually retreated. 3 dark-robed figures headed towards them. Who the fuck are they? There was a mix of surprise and bewilderment in their eyes. All of them were knights and they had mastered a great deal of skills, but there was no point in them pushing them back. Stop them. Stop them by whatever means you use before support arrives. It was no longer a matter of defending against a prison, but rather it was their entire pride that was at stake. I told you not to make a fuss, one of the dark-robed figures muttered as dozens of attacks were fired at him. Accordingly, his finger drew a line from left to right. What a laugh. A blood-red line was drawn in the air and all the attacks were scattered. The knights bounced like balls and passed through the doors leading to the prison basement. You two take care of this place, I'll go down and fulfill the mission. Inside a prison cell. Everything was dark. A humiliation that was engraved deep within a heart was branded in his heart. Being dragged along the road like an inanimate object, and on top of it, various loads had turned his life into hell. Not even a few days had passed, but he could already feel his mind turning into a mess. His days here were worse than death. The number of times he visited the prison and tortured people could not be counted, nor did he remember it. For him, coming here had always been fun. Playing with people's hopes of letting them live, and that feeling of despair at the end of life brought with it a great deal of joy. However, never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the roles were going to be reversed like this. But he didn't lose hope, knowing that the second prince would surely find a way to help him. He believes in him because his life is of great importance to him, and even if he doesn't believe it, it could sink him. As Shen thought about all this, he could hear the sound of swords clashing and explosions. His numb eyes suddenly lit up and he muttered, "They're finally here. It seems like my bad days are over." He rubbed his palm in great excitement and muttered, "Let me out. Once I get out of this place, I'll try everything to finish that bastard off." His eyes flashed with hatred as he thought of Alex, who had always been a thorn in his eyes. Boom. The door on the other side leading to the hallway exploded, and a dark-clothed figure walked out. Shen jumped and saw a figure walking towards his cell and throwing the door open. "You came to save me?" Shen asked in an excited voice. The dark-clothed figure nodded. Yes, I've come to free you. Shen suddenly frowned as he heard a deep, hoarse voice. I've come to free you from the world, he muttered and closed the distance. What? Shen jumped in fear as he saw the dark-clothed figure appear before him. A dagger appeared in his hand and shot towards Shen. Shen staggered and fell backwards. He raised his voice and screamed as he closed his eyes. Don't kill! Shen, who was screaming in fear, heard a shriek from the opposite end and opened his eyes to see the dagger stopping before his eyes. He caught a glimpse of the face of the dark-clothed figure. His face was half-burned and it was difficult to identify his expression, but Shen could see his contorted expression. The dark-clothed figure was mortified for a moment as the dagger did not move forward even though he applied all his strength. A dark mist appeared beside him and his wrist was wrapped in the dark thread. Who are you? How can you have powers similar to ours? The man's lips trembled and his complexion turned ugly. The man got no response, but he saw a black sword coming towards him. Chapter 507, Failed Assassination. The dark-cloaked figure's mission was quite simple. Enter a prison cell and kill Shen. All of them have different kinds of abilities and with their mythic ranked powers, there were no possible dangers in the mission. They didn't kill the core powers of the knights they encountered and only killed the weaker ones. Meanwhile, even if a mythic ranked expert came, they would be able to easily deal with him, so the only thing that posed a threat to them were the experts above the mythic realms. However, he had never expected someone to appear here with power similar to them. No, his power seems to be more vast and profound than theirs. Shen opened his eyes and saw a dark figure standing in front of him, causing him to jump in fear and back away. Did the second prince send someone to protect me? Is he one of the organization's traitors? As this thought came to Seer's mind, he immediately withdrew his hand. Aha! Alex's sword slammed into him rapidly. Her right arm was cut off and she flew backwards. Shaking off the pain, Ceres backed away to gain some distance. Not bad, Alex thought and ran towards Ceres, not giving her a chance to catch her breath. Traitor! As she let out a painful cry, Ceres extended her left arm. Following his gestures, the space on all sides began to tear apart as his left arm began to protrude and enlarge, pointing towards Alex. The pressure emanating from the dark hands with sharp claws was much stronger than before. Shen crouched down and screamed in horror as he leapt towards the wall. But no matter how powerful he is, it is all meaningless as long as he can cut. Alex pulled out his sword. He cut off his thumb from his palm along with the flesh below, and a gap was created on the black hand. Disgusting, Alex exclaimed and sped through the gap that was created and disappeared on the spot. Although Ceres was startled, he readied the defensive techniques before his body. A dark shield appeared before him and in the meantime, he thought of finding a solution to reverse things. But his thoughts were destroyed as Alex's sword destroyed the dark barrier in a single breath. A fatal scar appeared on the chest of the man who was screaming painfully. Dark blood gushed out from his body and the man cast a spell to increase the space between them. Alex simply swung his sword, cutting off the magic spell before it could fully form. Ceres burst into shock at the sight and spoke in disbelief. Who are you and why can't I sense your power level? Ceres, who had forgotten to measure her opponent, finally felt a bad feeling. A savage grin seemed to form on the face of a figure dressed in a dark veil. Red eyes flashed crazily and he burst into maniacal laughter. I can't die, she screamed and a series of ugly black hands sprouted from her body and rushed towards the figure covered by the dark veil. Death, a thought began to fill her mind. Every attack she made was blocked by that strange glowing darkness. It wasn't just the darkness. Because whenever magic touches that unknown darkness, it disappears without a trace. I need to turn the situation around somehow, it was then. Hugh, with a thought in mind, Ceres exploded with all her remaining power in an instant, making the last effort. A shockwave that exploded in all directions with a roar that seemed to tear apart the eardrums. As a result, the cavities in the ceiling and the side gaps were destroyed. Then Ceres gathered her strength as if she was preparing for the final blow. The other two might come here. I'll finish them all off here. Alex kept his distance by cutting through the shockwaves coming at him and raising his sword in a straight line. The sword of annihilation descended in a straight line formed. The 8 black stars exploded and the swirling darkness gathered on his sword and turned into a dark beam that instantly shut out. A beam shattered the wave and the remaining defensive techniques and pierced through Ceres' head and shattered it into pieces. Bang! With that everything fell silent and all the waves around them dissipated. The sound of footsteps echoed and 2 figures ran towards the place. Ceres, what's going on? Why are you taking so long and making so much noise? The two figures dressed in dark cloaks exclaimed in surprise. However, their words stopped halfway as the headless corpse was on the ground and a figure with a dark veil stood in the middle. You killed him. Their eyes were tinged with anger and hatred as they stared at the veiled figure. Red blood began to take shape into various weapons and was thrown at Alex. I killed him, so what? Alex looked at them coldly and swung his sword. Everything that entered the bow disappeared. So what now? One of the man's bloody eyes flashed and blood poured out of his body, taking shape into various writhing creatures. Why are your powers so ugly? Is there no one decent among your group? Alex shouted and darkness spread like waves, darkening the entire place. The man screamed and tried to take a step back, only to find himself in the clutches of the dark-cloaked figure. A hand appeared above his head and a playful smile formed on Alex's lips. In order to avoid any unwanted risks, I have not looked into the opponent's memories, but now there is no need to do so. Alex laughed and squeezed the dark-cloaked figure. Veins bulge on his forehead and a bloody aura begins to be absorbed from his head and countless images flash through Alex's retina. Enough. The other dark-clothed figure screamed. Two scythe-like hands appeared behind his back and pointed at Alex. Swish. Swish. The scythe slashed but only met air. His eyes lit up in embarrassment and he looked at the enemy. Let's see what you got. His body shook as he heard a strange voice come out of nowhere. Swish. A huge long hand made of darkness materialized and covered his head. A painful scream burst from his lips, and after which his vision went dark and his body lost its support. Chapter 508, Failed Assassination 2. Alex closed his eyes and took a moment to look through the memories he had stolen. A small smile appeared on his lips. His face looked quite happy, but to Shen, it looked like the devil's smile before creating a mess. Who are you? Shen shuddered at the sight of the figure covered by the dark veil. Funny. You're really good at acting. Shen shuddered slightly at the sound of his swords. I've always wondered why a mythical ranked player like you always gets a one-sided beating. What do you mean? I'm just weak. I've lost my touch because of laziness. Ah. Is this true? The figure dressed in a dark veil walked over and stopped in front of Shen. Seeing Shen tremble, the dark-veiled figure leaned down. A hand caressed Shen's head, causing his entire body to shake. Shen's entire body was drenched in sweat, and the fat on his body began to foul off. Alex brought his lips close to his ears and said, Don't worry, Shen. You're my golden goose. You're not going to die easily. Shen's eyes widened and he suddenly grabbed his head due to the searing pain. Touch? 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 It seems our meeting has come to an end. I promise you one thing, next time we meet, you're in for a big surprise, probably the best one you've ever had. A mischievous laugh rang out in Shen's ears and the figure in front of him dissipated into dust and disappeared. Shen stared blankly at the scene as he clutched his head. Who is he? Why did he save me? What's his motive? Hundreds of questions filled Shen's head, and the more he thought about it, the more afraid he became. No, don't tell me he found out. Haha, no, it can't be. It's been years since then and I've made sure not to leave any trace behind. But what is this damn pain? Ah! Shen groaned and thrashed on the ground, and his blurry eyes took in the sight of the Kinley Knights, whose faces were horrified at the sight of three pale corpses lying in front of them. Hester, who took the lead, was shocked. Sir, did Shen kill them? Hester gulped and looked at Shen, who seemed to be moaning in pain. It seems so. I never imagined Shen would be so strong, a subordinate beside her said. He defeated those bastards who wiped out an entire legion by themselves. He had hidden himself quite deeply, Hester muttered in surprise. I thought he was a foolish, weak, fat bastard, but now we know his true face. If he didn't have that much ability, why would the second prince keep Shen by his side? Hester and everyone nodded towards the knights. Place him in a special cell and put mana-blocking handcuffs on him. We can't be negligent any longer. Increase security and take these corpses. See if you can find anything among these bodies. Yes, sir. If only Ellen knew that everyone had misunderstood his strength, causing them to tighten security and force him to wear mana-restricting handcuffs, she would die vomiting blood, blaming the dark-veiled figure. The imperial decree restoring Alex's status spread throughout the capital. The declaration shocked everyone. Rumors were already circulating about his struggles and his contribution to the war. Some stories were so exaggerated that many found them ridiculous. While many were happy and sympathized with Alex as they knew what kind of troubles he had suffered while growing up. Some were quite worried and wondered what kind of changes were going to happen, while others rubbed their palms wondering about the interesting things that were going to happen at the council. If they played their cards right, a huge fortune would surely await them in the future. While the world was frantically wanting to know more about Alex, the person at the center of all this was moving towards the next target. The Kinley Magic Tower. This place, also called the Imperial Magic Tower, is the center of great importance for magicians. Magicians who graduated from Zenith Academy or elites who had made a name for themselves could become members of this place. It also had a university exclusively for magicians, however the conditions to enter here were harsher than Zenith Academy. It is a place that every young magician wants to enter, but no matter how good you are, if they don't find your talent good enough, you can't come here. Shrestha, a second-year student at the Magic University, let out a deep sigh as she walked down the hallway. Following her was a group of students who only at first glance could be branded as bootlickers. Shrestha, is there a problem? The young magician standing beside her asked as he saw her tired look. She was known as one of the top 10 beauties in the entire Magic Tower. Being a half-elf girl, she had inherited the charms of the elves, and as she grew up, her charm materialized along with her beauty. Her family was also excellent, so it was inevitable that there would be people who would chase her around to try and gain her favors. Unlike the warm smile she showed to everyone, she was sneering inside. She had been kidnapped and was going to be used as a sacrifice, from which she came to learn the ugly side of humans. No matter how close you are, if your life is in danger, you will do everything to protect yourself, even if you are going to risk the lives of others. She knew this very well because she is the same. And those people who lick her feet may one day stab her if necessary. So it is best to use them as much as possible and then get rid of them before they can show their poisonous fangs. Nothing, I've just been really tired, I need help with a project, can you all help me and get some materials? She spoke in a sweet voice. I'll take care of everything, just give the order, I'll be even faster than him. The bootlickers started to show their excitement. It was at that moment that she heard a commotion as she entered the classroom. Who is that person? Who are the teachers hoping to meet? She saw the students in the classroom gathered by the window looking at what's going on. Will a person with a high noble status appear? Shrestha thought with a puzzled expression. However, no matter how much she thought, she couldn't recall any statement about some noble visiting, as they would surely announce it beforehand. Hey, can you find out what's going on? Okay, Motto nodded and ran forward. Shrestha, with a strange feeling, moved to the desk and then tried to take a peek through the window. Soon after, Shrestha's eyes began to tingle as she saw a single person in front of the carriage, and somehow, the person's silhouette seemed familiar to her. At that moment, Motto came running and shouted, Shrestha, it seems that the fifth prince whose status had been restored made a sudden visit. Shrestha, who heard her words, did not know why and felt a bad feeling. Chapter 509, Imperial Magic Tower. Your Highness Alex, we warmly welcome you to our Imperial Magic Tower. My name is Ron Hindle, one of the professors here. Alex, who stood at the main gate of the tower, looked at the professors who were bowing their heads towards him. There was a slight embarrassment in the professor's eyes. Alex knew the reason. It was only an hour ago that Alex informed the Imperial Magic University that he was going to visit. Although many members of the Imperial family had visited this place for encouragement, it must be the first time that someone had appeared here on such short notice. 3 hours ago, even Alex hadn't imagined that he would come here. He was dealing with those 3 thugs, and from the information he obtained, there might be an important event at the university today, and secondly, Alex also needs to meet the head of the Magic Tower. I heard that you came to meet Lord Osborne, but currently the Lord is away for a while. We will guide you to the waiting room, where you can wait for a while if you wish. If that's the case, can I take a look at the Magic Tower? Yes, of course we will guide you. The reason Alex suddenly visited us without letting us know beforehand was that he needed to do some post-processing here. The classrooms on every floor are equipped with a mana fan that could control the influx of mana, allowing everyone to collect mana as soon as possible, and at the same time, as soon as he entered the tower, Professor Heisenberg began to explain everything as if he had prepared it in advance, and he also seemed quite accustomed to this situation. Alex's eyes swept across numerous lecture rooms on the sides of the corridors, and he found something interesting. Can I take a look at the lecture hall? Yes. At Alex's question, Professor Heisenberg's eyes were tinged with doubt. To be honest, there were some things Heisenberg couldn't understand about Alex, who suddenly visited him. Since he started later than other family members, why is this person visiting here instead of trying to gather energy as quickly as possible? Furthermore, he was deeply observing Magic's lecture halls. Is he trying to recruit a subordinate here? As Heisenberg followed Alex's gaze, he didn't notice that the shadow standing behind Alex split apart and quickly walked away without attracting anyone's attention. Are you sure? Yes, Alex said, and the professor nodded. He felt a strange pressure from Alex and guided him towards the path. Alex walked to the front of the classroom he had seen beforehand and opened the door without hesitation. All the gazes of the professor and the students in the classroom focused on him immediately. The students began to chatter, wondering who he was, and the professor, who had been in the middle of a lecture that started quite a while ago, didn't know anything about Alex, nor had he seen him yet. Seeing the black embroidered clothes, he wondered who he was. Professor Heisenberg stepped forward to dispel the uneasiness and spoke. Please everyone greet His Highness the Fifth Prince Alex von Stan. The students stood up and immediately bowed their heads. As everyone's gaze fell on him, Alex saw the girl looking at him with mixed expressions. Sadness, regret, and most of all surprise. She was too shocked to even stand up from her seat. After all, he was the person who had saved her. However, what did she do? She stabbed him to save herself. Never in her wildest dream had she imagined that this man would become the outcast fifth prince who would soon regain his status. She began to sweat, wondering if he had come to find her seeking revenge. Her feet were shaking and her eyes were filled with fear. If she were to recount the scene of the attack, no member of the family would escape capital punishment. Alex's eyes turned to her and he gave her a faint smile. Alex turned his head and said, "It's a pleasure to meet you all here. You may continue with the class." I was fainting and decided to reminisce about my days at the academy. Alex muttered and walked back, and the silence of the class still persisted even though Alex had disappeared. At first glance, the room seemed to be filled with antiques. Alex, who was sitting at the table in the center of said room, tilted the coffee cup in front of him. Not good. With these words, Alex's eyebrows furrowed slightly. Alex put down the coffee on the table and looked around. The place he was currently in was the exclusive reception hall that only distinguished guests were allowed to enter. There was a knock on the door, and an older man with a drooping beard entered the room. "I'm sorry to have kept you waiting, Mr. Alex." Alex looked at the long snow-white beard and the hair that seemed to reach his waist. A wrinkled face with a gentle smile that seemed to be filled with kindness. And even the pure white robes of a mage. An archmage who reached the Holy Realm, and at the same time the head of the University Magic Tower. "Where have you been?" He couldn't explain, nor did he have the heart to explain, so Alex dove into the topic directly. As Alex knew, Osborne couldn't just go out as he wished. "I had a problem and went to visit a place. It's not a big deal, but don't worry about it." Alex shook his head as if he didn't miss the bitterness in his words. Alex slightly raised his chin and looked at Osborne from the corner of his eyes. Osborne gasped deeply when he saw two pairs of dark, languid eyes that seemed to be dragging him into the abyss. "You must treat your people carefully so they don't run away and bite off more than they chew. The magic tower should always be neutral, so tell me." Alex leaned forward and spoke with a threatening tone. "Why do the elders of the tower side with the second prince and support him for the throne from behind? Let me tell you. If I don't get a satisfactory answer, you must prepare yourself." Chapter 510, Spreading the Net. Osborne shook his head and smiled bitterly at Alex's question. "I didn't expect you to be so direct and get straight to the point. Before I answer you, I have a question for you. Would you mind indulging my curiosity?" Alex nodded and asked him to continue. "Mr. Alex, do you think human nature can be easily changed?" The old wizard's voice continued slowly in Alex's ears. "We wizards have always put our hearts and souls into peering into the secrets of the world. We have tried to study the laws that govern even the gods and goddesses. And I don't know if you remember or not. The head of the magic tower is assisting in the Stan family's awakening ritual." Alex's curiosity was piqued by his words. "So, the ritual shows the essence of humans. Unlike other princes, the essence I had seen was very clear in color. It was so warm and bright that I don't think anyone could forget it. However, the essence of you that I see now is completely different. No, it's correct to say that he can't see anything. Everything about the person before him was shrouded by the mist of darkness. And on top of that, there was an ominous feeling that prevented him from digging any deeper. All he could see was a pitch-black abyss that was waiting to devour its prey. Through the dark mist, two savage eyes that made his body tremble suddenly appeared before his sight. He felt that at that very moment, the feeling of death had never been so close. Mr. Alex, What exactly are you? A heavy silence invaded the living room. The silence began to press down on Osborne and he felt as if he had been sitting on a pile of needles. Alex chuckled as he leaned forward. He was completely amused and surprised as well. A low-voiced question followed by a shout came out of Osborne's mouth. In the eyes of the archmage who grabbed the fragments of truth, an inexplicable feeling began to stir. As he could see what it meant, Alex was certain that Osborne had mystical eyes that could study an aura and could see what Athena always sees. Alex slowly opened his mouth and looked into Osborne's eyes, his eyes languid but dark. Does it matter? Alex's lips curved slightly like a crescent moon as he spoke. What matters is that I, who stand before you, am called Alex von Leon Herd or Alex von Stan. I have survived the hardships of life and am now capable enough to speak to you. That's all you need to know. Osborne felt an endless thread erupt from Alex's eyes. A terrifying sense of pressure, quite unlike anything he had ever felt before, made him shudder momentarily. It reminded him of Emperor Kevin's heyday. Is this due to the awakening of the blood? Can there be such a drastic change? I was reckless to ask the Lord who he was, so I apologize for that. By the way, I'm curious about one thing. From the pressure, I'm sure your strength has surpassed those in the Holy Kingdom, and surprisingly, I can't sense your kingdom. Still, people like you shouldn't interfere in the world. Alex knew this too. Once he made his appearance in the treaty, those lunatics would try to restrict him. The imperial family had a bit of freedom in terms of restrictions, but they still couldn't fight anyone weaker than them or below the Saint Kingdom. Therefore, he needs to finish all the loose ends as quickly as possible before they impose restrictions on him. I need to wait for the treaty. Since I've answered your questions, can you please stop wasting my time with meaningless questions? Haha. Sorry about that. Old people like us tend to talk a lot, Osborne said with an awkward smile and wiped his face. Your Highness, we always follow the neutral policy, and so it has been, and so it will be in the future. Although we supervise the members and impose a strict policy on them, there are some who don't abide by it. Are you going to give me a useless reason like we don't restrict their freedom and they're free to do whatever they want? Alex spoke with a frown. No, I didn't mean that. There are thousands of people here, so we can't monitor every single individual, which is why people like to get carried away by greed and act behind our backs. After you sent me a report about the elder you killed who belongs to the magic tower, I've already started to take care of this. In a few days, I promise I'll give you a proper answer. Alex observed Osborne's expression. He deeply regretted not using Soul Search on that bastard. I wish I had known about those morons before they died, but isn't that why you're here? I have a way to help you. How? Osborne asked in surprise. You just have to sit back, watch, and allow me to act. You can also participate if you wish. Osborne began to sweat profusely. Seeing his concern, Alex assured him. Don't worry, I'm a very calm and reasonable person. If Alex's wives and his soldiers had heard this, they would have fainted on the spot. Leave everything in your hands. Will the magic tower still exist if I let you take care of it? However, he kept his worries to himself. And the second thing, did you have any information about the scrolls? Are you talking about those scrolls you caught 3 years ago? Yes, we have sent our men to deal with them and try to stop the circulation. We stopped it at the market and captured many people. However, all of them died before we caught them. No matter how hard we have tried, these cockroaches just won't stop coming out and the scrolls are still circulating through illegal means. How will these cockroaches stop coming when they have been breeding every day right under your nose? What? Osborne spoke with a surprised expression. Getting his curiosity piqued, Alex began to narrate the events and cast the net to catch them. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 511, Spreading the Network 2. Damn it, why did he turn out to be a prince? Why exactly? My life was going very well. Everyone recognized me, but was it necessary for him to come here and cause such a stir? Why am I so unlucky? The hallway of the university tower was filled with faint mutterings from the half-elf walking alone. His eyes were filled with shame and anger. In Shrestha's eyes, the image of herself, who had been rejected by Prince Alex's eyes, was endlessly repeated. Shrestha, whose mind was in confusion, looked around at the empty place. There was not a single student around here. By the way, what suddenly happened? The reason why Shrestha was in the tower at that time was because she received a call from Professor Lindell. Originally she came from a noble family who needed to leave just because someone called her, but this time it was a special case that could affect her grades, which could destroy everyone's perception of her. The only thing she hopes is that the professor doesn't look for trouble with her. Although it was one of the best university institutions for magical education in the empire, not all the professors were clean. Many tried to use various means to achieve their purposes here. No matter what happens, if you dare to mess with me, I will make sure to take that bastard with me. Shrestha, who arrived in front of the classroom, abruptly opened the door and entered. Shrestha, why are you here? Shrestha, did you also call here? Shrestha saw 8 students and 2 teachers present there. Professor Eddie and Professor Kristen, did you gather us all together to have a discussion? She asked curiously, raising her eyebrows with a solemn expression. Everyone here was a member of some big families who have great importance in social circles. No, I didn't. They also asked us to gather here. The 2 teachers tilted their heads. Shrestha, who was confused and puzzled at the same time, wondered what was going on. Click. At this moment, a subtle click was heard and a middle-aged man with a very gentle teaching impression and a cold attitude appeared. So finally all of you have gathered here. Professor Eddie frowns at her words and steps forward. Professor Hindle is telling us now. Why did you all gather here at this hour? What do you want from us? Seeing her firm attitude, Professor Hindle speaks with a smile on his face. I have called you here to discuss something important, something that will decide whether everyone will live or die. Knock. 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 With those words, Professor Hindle began to slowly approach the students. What do you mean? The atmosphere was cold and Professor Hindle seemed quite different than usual. Seeing this, everyone unconsciously took a step back. You all are unfortunate enough to have witnessed or encountered certain things that shouldn't have happened. Then, I have to clean up this whole mess. I hope you all understand. A soft voice came from Professor Hindle's lips as he approached the student faster. What? A scream burst from everyone's lips. Moments of doubt and fear lingered on everyone's faces. What the heck? Sharp tentacles passed from one of the students' chest and pierced another. Gaga gaga gaga. Sav. The students were unable to plead for their lives and their breathing hushed as they succumbed to death. Their eyes still had that confused look, unable to comprehend the situation until the moment of their death. Hindle, Professor Eddie and Professor Kristen made their moves. As Professor Eddie and Professor Kristen moved forward to protect the students, they suddenly saw dozens of black tentacles appearing from Professor Lindell's body and aiming at the students who were watching the scene with shocked eyes. Or what? Screams could be heard from all around. Shrestha, without looking back, slipped past one of the tentacles coming towards her and ran towards the door. She knew them. And she had experienced this disgusting beings that slaughter and sacrifice people for the so-called Dark God. A vile creature that kills without mercy. There was no way she could stand up to them. If her hunch was right, even the professor might not stand a chance. She decided to escape. Shrestha's heart was pounding in fear and approaching the door, she jumped and turned the knob. However, to her surprise, the door did not open. What? Without a second thought, she tried to blast the door with her magic spells, but to her surprise, the bombardment had no effect. No, someone help me, please open the door, she screamed in panic and pounded on the door hoping that the sound of the disturbance would reach the other side. However, it was all in vain. Tears ran from her eyes and she turned her stiff head to see Professor Eddie struggling with the monster while protecting the 3 children while the others had died. Professor Kristen had already fallen with a huge hole in his chest. Suddenly, the monster fighting them turned its head. Its head turned 180 degrees and Professor Hindle's humanoid face with a smile appeared in her sight, which stunned her for a moment. I'm sorry, my dear son. I've placed a barrier here. No one is getting out of here alive. Bracing herself, Shrestha chanted magic inside trying to look for ways to get out. She noticed the open window on the other side and thought that if she could sneak in when the others were fighting, she might be able to get out of there alive. Tempest Blast. She fired her magic with all her mana, but her spell was destroyed by the tentacle's hip movement. Taking the opportunity, Professor Eddie attacked him, however, the tentacles wrapped around him and protected him from the blast. Shrestha took the chance and ran towards the open window but something pierced her thigh. She rolled on the ground grimacing in pain as tentacles floated around her. Something interesting has happened here, a calm voice was heard and suddenly the door exploded. The door flew off and hit the tentacles coming towards Shrestha. Shrestha's eyes widened and her body shook in surprise. "You've already made a mess," a single voice echoed in Shrestha and Professor Heindel's ears. Its voice was low but very vivid, as if it was speaking right next to them. A voice that conveyed an unknown danger. As if they were possessed by something, people's heads turned towards the direction the voice came from. They soon saw Alex walking forward leading a group of people. Alex's eyes sank as he looked around the classroom. A thick smell of blood permeated the classroom. And with this the scene inside the classroom where 5 corpses were scattered randomly with holes all over their bodies. Professor Eddie was injured and managed to save 2 students who were behind him. The professor behind Alex frowned at the sight. It was a gruesome sight, as if they had been stabbed with dozens of spears all over their bodies to the point that they could not be identified. Professor Hindle, who had many tentacles coming out of his body, looked at Alex with an unchanging atmosphere. "What a bad time to make an appearance. You could have kept your life if you hadn't appeared here, Prince Alex." "Ouch." Alex rubbed his chin and spoke. "Yes, I could say the same about you too." Chapter 512, Spreading the Network 3. Lindell, a high-ranking member wearing the professor mask, was tasked with dealing with the survivors who had escaped their control. It had taken them several years to infiltrate the magic tower, and they finally managed to get a stable base. They were just waiting for the support of a strong backer to clean up their mess, and since this condition was met a few days ago, nothing was stopping them from carrying out a massacre. They weren't idiots to murder them in broad daylight. From the start it was all a trap. After finishing this task, there was another person who would come here later and who was going to bear the burden of death. However, a variable appeared in their plans. How the hell did he appear here and at the exact time on top of that? Is it a coincidence? They had warned him to do things carefully, but he thought they were simply too cautious. "Your Majesty Alex, don't come closer. It's dangerous. We'll deal with him. Kill the culprit." The professors muttered and stepped forward. Alex nodded and the teachers charged towards Lindell. Lindell's eyes widened and he struggled furiously, seemingly trapped by the professor's formation. Shrestha and Professor Eddie quickly retreated from the scene of the battle. "Are you trying to punish the culprit who directly caused the murder in this way?" "Yes, we should deal with him." Alex chuckled and his body shifted. Lindell's eyes were tinted with suspicion as he saw Alex appear before him. Alex stretched out his hand and without warning knocked the head. The classroom was suddenly filled with a heavy silence due to an unbelievable situation. A head detached itself from the body and rolled to the ground. The sight made everyone around them widen their eyes in a daze, as if they couldn't understand what was happening now. Because the head didn't belong to Lindell, but was the head of Professor Hund, who accompanied Alex here. Alex stared at them and in such silence, he stretched out his hand and pulled out his sword. "Your Majesty. What the hell is this?" Finally one of the professors who was observing the scene broke the silence with a trembling voice, but Alex without hesitation turned around and pushed towards another whose neck was immediately blown off. Quack! Blood gushed out like a fountain and the body fell to the ground with a thud. Alex turned his head towards Lindell, who had his mouth open, and asked, "Lindell, tell me, did those people fail the acting class? Why are they such pathetic actors?" At that moment, both Lindell and the professor's eyes widened in horror. "No, it can't be. What a cunning guy. This bastard knew." Alex looked at the 2 corpses and then at the professor. His sword began to envelop him in a dark aura that began to suck in the light nearby. "Since it's come to all this, let's go after that bastard." A terrifying scream began to rise from the remaining professor. Crick! Crick! Along with a strange sound, the bones in their bodies seemed to deform into a completely different structure than the human body. Horns began to appear and bat-like wings began to sprout from their backs. The professors who had returned to their original forms stared at Alex and overwhelming magic erupted from their bodies and began to tear apart everything around them. The pressure emanating from them was beyond the mythic rank. Just by revealing their presence the surrounding atmosphere vibrated like crazy. Although Alex was unfazed by their strength, a random thought appeared in his mind. So far all the people he had met who belonged to that organization were above or at the same level of legendary ranks. Even in Arkham the weakest was at the legendary rank, which could increase their strength greatly. If even the weakest of them was at this level, then that means this matter is quite troublesome and serious. Shrestha and the survivors screamed in shock and stood frozen in place. The creature of darkness that had lost its sanity roared and created a storm of magic and ganged up on Alex. With an explosive sound, Several figures were sent flying backwards and crashed into the classroom path. Shortly after, Alex appeared holding a sword of annihilation. A strange and different darkness enveloped his sword. Alex stretched out his right foot. The darkness amplified and gushed forth. At the same time, the darkness creature bursts out from the wall and swears as it senses danger. They stomped their feet and appeared before Alex. Their thorny fists shot towards Alex with a force that could destroy the entire floor of the magic tower, causing it to collapse. Alex took a step forward and at the same time slashed his sword diagonally. Yummy! The darkness erupted and collided with the darkness creatures. The wizards spurted out and seemed to be hit by an abysmal force, and their bodies crashed into several walls one after another, destroying several classrooms along the way. Black blood gushed out from their lips and a creepy feeling washed over them. Crazy bastard, how did you become so strong? This isn't the borrowed power you demonstrated while fighting with a demon. What is this? No matter what happens, once they find out, you're not going to be left alive. Alex rubbed his chin. You're right about that. But how will they know if there's no one left alive after witnessing my power? The words hit his throat and Lindell's expression worsened. And by the way, I'm not going to deal with you damn bugs, huh? The light returned to their eyes as they thought that they might have a chance if someone else fought them. Your opponent isn't me. A light laugh escaped Alex's lips that didn't fit the situation. What? It was at this moment that a deeper question appeared in the shadow creature's mind. Then it was a flame. A transcendental flame that covers the shadow creatures without warning, at the same time spreading in all directions, dyeing the entire world violet. Chapter 513, How to Get Rid of Thorns. Violet-purple flames that seemed to burn everything when touched began to run wildly everywhere. In a world where everything has turned violet, the bearer of the flame appeared with a growing killing intent in his eyes. You dare, filthy creatures, how dare you run riot in this place that I have given my heart and soul to for it to remain where it is today? Osborne, their bodies shuddered as they witnessed the old man's flaming eyes. You have already crossed the mythic realm. How can you interfere and attack the lower realm? Lindell shouted with a panicked expression, trying to buy some time to escape. However, it did not go unnoticed by Osborne's eyes. Another person opened their lips as a sudden thought appeared in their mind. You already knew about us. How? The flames begin to condense, forming a cocoon around them. You know what? As long as we detect a creature of darkness, we will be able to attack it without any reaction. It's not that the treaty had no loophole. They can't strike first, but they can retaliate if the other party takes the initiative first. Secondly, there is no law binding them. It is the organization that will issue the punishment if the rules are broken. This means that if there is a madman, he could simply go mad and hide until he is discovered or killed. I have every right to kill you, and secondly, you didn't need to know how we know about you. Wait a moment. I want to make you a concession. Alex's image appeared before Lindell. He extended his hand, which passed beyond the flame barrier, burning Lindell, and caught his head. Duck down. You're going to burn. Osborne screamed in terror and hurriedly tried to disperse the flames in fear of Alex getting hurt. However, to his surprise, Alex's hands were fine. Alex laughed inwardly as he saw Osborne's expression. Burned hands? To whom? The Flame Emperor. If his previous reincarnation had heard this, he would have died laughing. From fragments of memories, Alex gained knowledge about the power of his previous racket. He who walked the path to Master Fire had divided flame attacks based on purity and destruction. Red, orange, yellow, blue, purple, violet, and white. White being the strongest of all. And Osborne, through years of research and practice, had managed to form an intermediate of violet-purple flames. However, it lacks the fundamental devastation that his previous life had achieved. Compared to this is just a small splint. Alex closed his eyes and went through countless bits of information, while Lindell and others screamed due to heart-wrenching pain. Osborne looked at the scene curiously, wondering what was going on. Is he torturing them? I'm done for my part. You can do whatever you want, Alex muttered and took a step back as he rolled his eyes at those pitiful beings for the last time. He was surprised to see that the shadow creatures were fine. Their memory extraction often turned people into fools, but he found that it only affected those below legendary rank. Osborne kept his curiosity to himself to ask Alex, and walked towards the traitors with a menacing expression. How dare you do this in my tower? Osborne roared, which was followed by screams and wails. Hey, at least leave his living body as proof. Alex turned his back and walked towards Shrestha, whose body was shaking like a dry branch in the middle of a storm in a corner. Hey girl, long time no see. Hey, Shrestha. Unable to utter a word, bowed her head in shame and embarrassment. "Thank you for saving me then and now, and please forgive me for, Alex cut off her words and spoke. "Listen girl, I didn't save you out of sheer goodwill, you should know this better than anyone." Shrestha shuddered as she saw Alex smirk, making him look like a wild, hungry wolf about to devour a poor sheep. What do you want for this? I'll do anything you say if it's within limits, please just, here, take this." Alex picked up a crystal stone and handed it to Shrestha. Shrestha looked at the crystal stone. She was startled for a moment and wondered what was inside. "Do as I say, hand it over to Marchioness Bernard as soon as possible, okay, and tell her that if she doesn't agree to my conditions, be prepared to face my punishment." "What's inside?" Shrestha asked in a fearful voice. "It's not something that should matter to little girls like you." Alex stood up and smiled at Shrestha's pale expression. "I hope we'll be on the same side soon, otherwise." Alex left the words unsaid and walked back, however she paused for a moment and left a few words before disappearing from sight. "I'm warning you. You don't dare look at what's inside the crystal. Believe me when I tell you, I'm already being merciful, so don't test my patience, otherwise, even death would be freedom for you." Shrestha looked at the crystal that seemed to be a recording device. She wanted to play it but didn't dare to. Her survival instinct told her that if she didn't give it to her father, or if her father didn't agree to a certain proposal, they might be truly doomed. Tick, tick, tick. Tapping the table, King Lennis sank into his chair contemplating something. He is the level 1 king of the Observium Kingdom. King Alex, as the name escaped his lips, he sighed deeply. Stands Alex. The name that had taken away all his sleep during those days. Who was he? If anyone had asked this before, the answer would be like this. He was a nobody. A mere insect that could be squashed. Although he grew quickly, he never posed any threat to him before. That was why he accepted the proposal to harass Leonhardt and soon take him down in order to get a suitable opportunity. Nevin was simply a small, poor, backward kingdom that had nothing great about it. However, after absorbing Amadon, Bright, and Right, it became the largest kingdom in Kingly. And this was a troublesome matter for all the Tyre kingdoms and those whose borders shared the newly discovered vast kingdoms. They were all insects compared to the central nobles, but there was still a certain hegemony and hierarchy between them. They wanted to prevent this kingdom from rising. Since it swallowed up 4 kingdoms quickly, it was inevitable that there would be many problems with its operation. However, under the rule of Catherine Wiseman and the exploits of Alex, the situation quickly stabilized. Their army is strong enough to stand up to the forces of the central armies. Seeing their growing power, many people, both from the center and other kingdoms, became worried. They could attack them from the front, but due to Empire Kevin's stance towards King Alex, they refrained from doing so and waited for an opportunity, which eventually appeared, and they received the prince's signals. Like a hungry wolf, they all pounced on him. But what's the result? Not only was Leonhardt able to fight off their forces from all sides and bring them to a stalemate, but King Alex also received the acknowledgement that he had been deferred and restored his status as a prince. The news was known yesterday, but it spread like wildfire and crushed their morale. No, what should I do? Should I bow my head and beg for forgiveness or continue with the attack? At that moment, Aurelian, the Prime Minister of Abesravian, smiled and spoke as he handed over a cup of wine. Your Highness, don't you think this is a good opportunity? Since Prince Alex is going to be running for succession, it seems like he's caught in all sorts of trouble. If we pressure Leonhardt now, not only might we be able to get a significant share, but we might also be able to gain the goodwill of the other princes. Lennis took a sip as she pondered for a moment. Still, their military strength is nothing to sneeze at. Aurelian chuckled and said, that's because we haven't fully attacked them. We're not the only ones going to attack them. Don't forget, Your Highness, we've lent the flares to Amadon. Prince Alex might get into trouble with us because of this in the future. You're right, we should take care of PFFFFT. Lennis, who was taking another sip, let out a mouthful of blood and clutched her chest. He tried to get up, but his legs were shaking and he was stuttering. Poison. Aurelian took a deep breath and said, I'm sorry, Your Highness, I have no other options. Your wine is poisoned. If I don't kill you, I'll kill my entire family. Lennis coughed up blood as she tried to channel her mana. She stood up and shouted, who is that bastard who asked you to do this? And don't tell me you didn't want to do this. But you're a fool. I'm a legendary rank. You greatly underestimated me. Do you think this is enough to take me down? Aurelian shook his head and said, I know this isn't enough. Lence's eyes widened as a sword pierced his chest from behind. Blood gushed out like a fountain and Lena's life faded away. That's why I am here to deal the final blow. The masked man pulled out his sword and Lena's lifeless body fell to the ground. You shouldn't have offended His Highness. May you find peace in your next life. Aurelian looked at the man and asked, did you kill everyone? Yes. Every member of this family is worse than trash. What now? Aurelian asked. Our orders were simply to get rid of them. However, if you want to sit on the throne, I can help you, but on the condition that I become your dog. Aurelian spoke with a solemn expression. Don't worry, my lord is merciful. He treats his subordinates well, and who knows? Maybe you'll grow up to be a great king. Is that why you involve me in your plans? With your strength, I'm sure you can kill him easily. The masked man laughed. You're quite clever, huh? What can I do except obey you since we're on the same boat? Aurelian spoke with a sad expression. Chapter 514, Night Raid. The carriage rattled as the horses strode through the streets that led to dark alleys in the Euros district. Alex leaned his head against the window and looked at a dark figure on the other side. Your Highness, we have eliminated 4 royal families and are awaiting your new order. I think that is enough for now. Don't assassinate the other one. Just cover your tracks and prove that this was all due to rebellion. We will crush the rest with a military front. Assassinating too many would draw attention. Yes, Your Highness. Try to finish the second task as soon as possible. The dark figure nodded and disappeared from the window. Alex felt a light touch on his hands and turning his head, he asked worriedly. Do you think I am walking the path of tyranny? Christina shook her head and said, it was them who started first, although you were quite harsh. Still, it is better than letting the matter fester. Alex opened his mouth but thinking about things he sighed. I'm a conservationist man. It may sound strange but I like to fight but at the same time I don't. If it's a battle between friends and a healthy competition, my heart fills with excitement, however when it comes to killing unnecessarily it's annoying. That's why I didn't want to get into that sequence. Once you enter the jungle, you have to live killing others or letting them eat you. We're just doing what we have to do, Christina assured Alex. But on the second note, are you sure about this? Christina asked in a worried tone. I mean, do we have enough forces to clean this up quickly? Are 2 of us enough? If something were to go wrong, we could receive pressure from all sides. Alex looked into her worried eyes and stroked her head. Don't worry, we just need a reason, a justification. As long as we have just enough we can do whatever we want. So, do you have one? Yes, Alex spoke with a smile and looked up at the moon that was rejecting him. He had no solid proof or evidence. He's going to take action based on the information he gained from the memory extraction and unfortunately, he cannot reveal it to others. He needs to strike them down quickly. Before they could know who their enemy was and before they could find a chance to escape. He will make sure to clean up the cats as well as the rats that serve as food for said cats. It's time for another bloodbath, the night street of Euros, where it was already past midnight and even the moon had already been covered by dark clouds. An Omen executive, Harmon, walked out to the warehouse. They had sent many men and he was waiting for the successful confirmation of 2 missions they had undertaken. It was an operation under the command of Harmon, one of the high-ranking members of Omen. One of the top 7 orders that has survived countless horrifying experiments. In addition, a special handling team was sent to disperse the group and deal with their co-workers. Everything has gone well, each member of whose group boasted good combat strength and the adaptability needed to finish the mission. Each member was equal to a highly trained knight and not inferior to real knights, while those who had been promoted to higher ranks were people who had special characteristics and each of them could bring calamity. It was a moment of joy in Hammer's eyes as he imagined the world that would be close to destruction and each of them would receive their reward. As he immersed himself in sweet fantasies, Chief Harmon, one of whose subordinates, entered the room with an urgent expression. Huh? What's going on? An intruder had appeared. How many? Hammer asked his subordinate with a serious expression on his face. This place had never been discovered as it is quite hidden. If someone can find this place, they will surely have a tremendous information network and vast power to dispatch a large number of troops. But his expression changed strangely at his subordinate's next words. It's one. What? It's just one, the person replied in a trembling voice. Are you crazy? Harmon stared at his subordinate for a moment as if he had heard something ridiculous and then continued speaking coldly. Stop staring at me and go kill him. He didn't know how they found that place, but there was nothing these bugs could do on their own. So this is where you're hiding. With that thought, Alex walked up to the building and knocked on the door that seemed to be about the same size as his own. Bang! From the part where Alex's toes touched, a spider web forcefully spread across the entire door, and then the door fell apart and collapsed. Shortly after, Alex stepped through the shattered door. Silence. 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 Dozens of poison-coated arrows rained down on Alex from all sides. Alex's appearance disappeared in the rain of arrows. Where did he go? At that moment, one of the archers at the entrance muttered, "Hey, don't stop. Keep shooting the arrows." "There's no need to shoot anymore," a voice came from behind the archers. With it, many archers turned their heads towards the source of the voice and saw Alex's figure emerging from the shadows. A line was drawn out of nowhere, and the archer's head was immediately separated from his body by Alex. Attack. Only when the head hit the ground did they notice Alex's existence. Boom. 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 Magic of various colors erupted from behind the archers as they charged forward. The moment those orbs pierced through the air and reached Alex. Shrek. Darkness surged as if it was burning all around, completely covering Alex from head to toe. The magic attack disappears without a trace when it touches Alex. With a sense of astonishment, total darkness invaded everything and covered the entire floor, giving the feeling that hell was descending upon them. Chapter 515, Night Ray 2. The entire floor shook and everyone trying to attack Alex was driven away. As the aura of darkness slowly began to recede, they came to their senses. Alex stepped forward once more, extended his right hand and pulled out. Scream. A sword-like darkness that started from the tips of Alex's fingers spread out in a straight line and shattered everything in its path. What the hell? With agonized screams and painful shrieks, people's bodies began to explode. Footsteps could be heard and many warriors descended towards him from the floor above. At that moment, many golden lines intertwined in the air and Christina appeared before Alex. The warriors recognized the threat and fired at her. Christina snorted and stabbed her sword into the ground. The attacks raining down on them from all directions bounced off as they hit the golden barrier. Christina turned to Alex and spoke in a soft tone. "Why did you make so much noise? It's going to attract unwanted attention. It's better this way. Make sure to destroy everything. There's no need to fight conservatively." Alex then looked up. His eyes scanned the entire structure of the building. It was an 8-story building and Alex felt a strong aura at the top. "Christina, you cleaned this up. I'm going up." She arched her legs downwards and suddenly shot upwards like an arrow. Boom. A portion of the ceiling collapsed as Alex passed through the ceiling to the upper floor, leaving Christina bewildered. Because a person of her caliber could move through the place in an instant without breaking things, but it seems Alex wanted to wreak havoc on the place. Christina stared at the people coming down, and they recognized her as the enemy and mistook her for the person who had created such an overwhelming and horrifying sight before them, and hurried inside. She sighed and wondered what Alex was thinking now. The sound of battle might alert the citizens and patrolling knights, so she needs to finish this quickly. Every single one of her enemies was of legendary rank, however. Quack. Kunk. No way. Victory was already decided. Christina grabbed her sword and slashed at it. A dense arc of aura condensed and shot towards the group of enemies. "Dodge it," one of the warriors shouted as 2 people were cut down by the arc. Christina leaned forward and her body shot out like a beam of light. One of the men was lucky enough to dodge the arc and saw a beam of light bounce off and appear behind. The hair on his back stood up and before he could turn around, a sword pierced through his body cutting him in 2. And soon the bloody battle began. It would be wrong to call it a battle, rather it was a one-sided massacre. During the war with the demons, Christina's potential erupted, causing her to overcome her limitations and the wall before her and managed to break through to the mythic rank. However, her prowess cannot be measured by human standards. Monster. You are a monster. Who are you and when have we ever offended someone like you? Why are you invading this place? The last surviving mage muttered to Christina as she walked backwards with a horrified face. Christina tilted her head and spoke with an innocent expression. "I don't know. I have no enmity with you." "What?" The mage felt a blood rush to his head. "Stop lying. Just say whatever you want. Perhaps I can be of some help." I'm sorry. I haven't been told to forgive anyone, so I apologize in advance." "You have to die?" "What?" "You don't stop." Along with an explosion, screams of people began to echo throughout the building as they died wondering what they did to attract such a calamity. All defenses on the second floor have been disconnected, the power to the first to fourth floor has been cut off, and we confirm the presence of 2 people. Fifth floor, I received a signal from the 5th floor. The elite team is connecting us, boss. We are fighting the intruder. Don't worry, we will break his limbs and hand him over to you. The signal was cut off with a scream. What the fuck is going on? Harmon muttered blankly as he listened to the signals from the combat teams that were so terrifyingly isolated that it was enough to scare anyone. There were 48 legendary ranks in the building, and God knows how many of them are still alive. And surprisingly, all of this happened in 49 seconds from the moment the intruder became a journalist. Does this make sense? It took a lot of power to break through this quality of warrior. But I couldn't comprehend this speed. And from the 2nd floor to the 5th, it took even less than a minute. It was an impossible speed unless there was an overwhelming gap between them and the enemies. Did you get the person's rank? Harmon muttered as he waited for a positive response. However, the signals continued to cut off. And then he could feel it. The sound explosions were getting closer to him. At that moment a word appeared in Hamron's head when he heard the sound of the explosion. Predator. A being born to hunt all other beings. Hamron believed in the existence of such a person. Because he was born with such a destiny. That is why he has been able to survive until now through countless hardships. And although he hadn't seen that person, he strongly felt that the intruder who is now destroying the floor was born to be a predator. His strength might be equal to or greater than that of a saint. It's too late to run now, and if we fight, there will be a risk of exposure. Boss, what should we do now? As the roar approached right in front of them, the other member of the organization looked at him with fearful expressions, waiting for further instructions. His eyes lit up and he stood up as his heart began to pound in excitement. He picked up a blue scythe which erupted with cold air, causing the temperature of the place to drop by several degrees. A chilling aura gathered around the scythe he held. The surrounding atmosphere couldn't withstand the force and began to freeze. Come on, I'm waiting for the moment you appear. I'll strip everything away and blow you into the air. Even a Saint Realm expert wouldn't be able to defend against his attack. Bang! 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 A roar was coming right in front of him. Hamron grabbed the handle of his scythe and his breathing became labored. It was then. Finally, the thick door of the warehouse was blown open. Then a black figure appeared, and Hamron, who was waiting for that moment, swung his scythe. The cold air condensed to the maximum limit and shot towards him, freezing everything. The entire roof exploded and shattered as a hurricane with freezing wind and blizzards swept through everything. Freezing everything that passed before him, the men around him were also frozen like statues and shattered into pieces. Icy gales blew below, sweeping away everything, and out of nowhere, the harsh winter descended upon the streets of Europe. Chapter 516, Night Raid 3. A deadly coldness invaded the place. The blast of freezing air accompanied by freezing fog erupted everywhere, covering the entire area in a thick cold mist. Ho-ha-ho-ha! A layer of fog blew as Harmon breathed in the cold air. His eyes swept across everything around him. The entire district suffered the onslaught of winter due to his attacks, which was sure to alert many forces. Although he managed to defeat the intruder, the cost was too high. Thick icy glaciers in the shape of large peaks had spread into the sky everywhere. All of his men were frozen and crumbled into particles by the attack. The intruder must have suffered the same fate, and his body might have decomposed into countless ice particles, or he might have frozen to death like a statue. Standing in the center of the frozen area, Harmon sighed deeply. Since it had come to this, I should just bury them alive in the snow and clean up the trash, Harmon muttered and took out his scythe for another swipe. Hamron opened his mouth as if he was going to swallow the whole place. A strong icy breath erupted again. That moment, he noticed something. It looked slow in his eyes, but he could feel the sharpness in it. A bright golden light rose into the air and completely shattered the huge aura that was being thrown out from Hamron's scythe. The bright light erupted and shone in the night as it reflected off the snow of the glacier. Boo-oo! Harmon protected himself even though he was pushed back by the crash. Crink! 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 With a shrill cranking sound, a layer of ice shattered like glass, and a blackish figure with his right arm frozen stepped forward. That was close, Alex thought as he looked at the aura from the previous crash that split into two and disappeared into nothingness. To be honest, when he opened the last gate he didn't expect something like this to happen. The attack fired at him was enough to kill any powerhouse around the Supreme Realm if they had taken the attack unprepared. If he hadn't used the power of darkness to create armor and draw his sword at the last minute, he would have surely died. Alex looked at his frozen right arm and felt a cold, icy aura trying to spread into his body like poison and froze him to death. From the memories he extracted, there was nothing about the exact power of the boss of this place nor his characteristics. The person was shrouded in darkness and was quite mysterious. However, after the person suffered the attack, he was able to infer the man's identity. He was one of the 6 individuals that the Dark Elf Moss spoke of when he was in Arkham. After finishing his thoughts, Alex looked at the green-haired middle-aged man in silence. What exactly are you? You have characteristics of both humans and demons, and at the same time, you also carry that fishy smell and filthy aura of those vile creatures of darkness. How? In response to Alex's question, a sound like a broken record began to resonate. How are you alive after suffering the attack, and who are you? You only need to know one thing, you're going to die today. Hammerin stood up, wiped the blood from his lips, and said, what joke, you've lost your right hand, and soon your body will begin to freeze. Anyone caught by the infinite ice will die. The aura of ice is like a poison that will slowly kill you. People who rely on artifacts sure bark a lot. Alex smiled coldly and looked at the blue scythe in Hammerin's hands. It was a good weapon. Alex shook his head and grabbed his frozen right arm, and under Hammerin's horrified haze, he pulled his arm. Crack. With a crack, Alex pulled his hand away from his body. Although he tore his hands off, there was no sign of pain in his expression. Seeing such cruelty, Hammerin felt a chill run down his spine. For a moment blood gushed out from the wound. Soon a golden aura covered Alex and a mass of twisted flesh began to crawl out from his right arm. Damn it, it's some kind of monster, isn't it? Harmon shouted and pulled out his scythe. He was caught off guard for a moment, but now that he snapped out of the trance, there was no need to give the enemy a chance to counterattack. The freezing, condensed air shot towards Alex. Alex slashed the sword with his left hand. The freezing breath was cut off by Alex's attacks, and Hammerin's body flew back like a rag doll with a cut on his chest. Alex's eyes narrowed as he saw the wound on Hammerin's chest healing rapidly. Light is the nemesis of a creature of darkness, but seeing him unaffected by light, Alex was now 100% sure that this person was one of the 6 experienced beings of men who had both affinities. I will kill you, Harmon roared with bloodshot eyes and slashed his palms. The blood from the cut was sucked into the scythe, which let out a blood-curdling shriek. A strong blizzard that blinds a sense began to blow with a blizzard. This is getting dangerous, Alex muttered. His right hand healed completely and a dark aura erupted from his body. Before Hammerin could perform the attack, Alex's body disappeared. Scratch. As if it was an illusion, Alex's sword appeared in front of him and pierced through his body like a knife through butter, and the part of the wrist holding the scythe fell off. Stick. Ow. Hammerin stared blankly at his missing wrist and screamed into the air. Not twice, Alex spoke in a cold voice and blew his head off. The last scene Hammerin saw dyed his vision black. That's it. Alex looked around and saw the scythe lying on the ground. Alex immediately walked over to it. As she crouched down to grab it, Alex felt a tingling sensation on her back and a hissing sound and reacted instantly. Condensing a mass of darkened aura in her hand, she stretched out her hand and fired it at him. The spear flew like a cannon, shattering the barrier of the encounters, and they boom. As if the sky had broken, a loud rumbling noise spread throughout the place, breaking eardrums. Christina, who reached the top, looked in Alex's direction and asked, "What happened?" "It ran away." Christina's eyes widened and she looked at Alex in surprise. Alex clicked her tongue in annoyance. "I didn't expect this cockroach to survive even if its head was cut off. So, what was the last attack?" "I was testing it and it survived," Alex said with a smile. Christina looked at Alex suspiciously because she was sure of one thing. Unless you're stronger than Alex, there is no escape route, because Alex had the power to mark his enemies and track his own. And seeing the scene, she was sure that he had let the fish escape to bait the bigger fish and then kill it. Chapter 517, A Terrifying Experience. A glint of indifference flashed across Alex's eyes. Able to stay alive when his head has been blown off. It was as if the person had become immortal. This omen might have created monsters that can't be killed by normal means, Alex muttered and waited for the dog to rush towards the master. He would then destroy both the dog and the master in one blow. Alex looked around and asked, "Christina, can you help me take a look at certain things?" Alex asked to find things that might contain dark properties after describing them a bit. Christina nodded and put her sword back into the sheath. As Christina began searching through the building, Alex crouched down and slid her finger across the side. Alex's finger froze and her body trembled for a moment, as if she had touched a metal that had been frozen for thousands of years. The materials used to make it were quite exquisite and many small runes were engraved on it. Sliding his finger, Alex wrapped his finger around it and pulled it upwards. Swish! A cold, icy aura erupted from the side. Alex's surroundings began to freeze. His hair, which was fluttering due to the cold wind, began to turn into crispy pieces of ice. Alex's body was invaded by a chilling aura that tried to freeze him. Excellent, Alex smiled and tightened his grip on the handle. You dare? Alex's eyes flashed with killing intent and he suppressed the icy aura. A small roar rang out and Alex saw a vague manifestation of an ice spirit floating around the side, seemingly trying its best to devour Alex. A remnant of the ice dragon's will. Is this the dragon clan's weapon? Alex's eyes widened in surprise. Did I secretly obtain a relic of the dragon clan? This weapon seems to be a sacred treasure. Now I understand why I was injured by the person who seemed to be at the holy realm. What a rude weapon. Young. Alex felt a certain vibration near his waist and faintly laughed as he patted his sword of annihilation. Ha ha ha, don't worry, it's just a piece of scrap metal in front of you. In Alex's mind, the faces of the core members of Omen who would be angry after knowing this came to mind. Christina came back with a sad look and said, I didn't find anything you mentioned. Alex frowned and shook his head with a deep sigh. The main reason for attacking here was to find a darkness pillar or something similar to that. I came here for that, but since there's nothing of that, we're going to steal everything. But the knights are coming, we have to get out of here. But Christina stared at him. How much treasure will be stolen? This place is full of illegal things and gold coins. We already have enough gold coins. Okay, I hope Osborne finds some. Now let's move on to the next target. Under the bright light of the full moon, a horse was pulling the carriage surrounded by men through a dark road. Inside the luxurious carriage, a plump middle-aged man with a beautiful mustache was humming happily. His name was Cyan Havish. He was a provincial noble and one of the 100 members of the Kinley State Council and was the leader of the fourth most powerful family after the imperial family. The empire was divided into dozens of kingdoms and many of them were grouped into regions that fell under a central noble. His house had massive influence and had 19 kingdoms under its command, and its prestige was inevitably very strong. There was only one reason why Cyan was humming like that. It's about time for the national meeting. The largest meeting in the empire will be held at the People's Palace. It was an important event where all sorts of powerful people, including lawmakers, gathered to determine the future of the empire. Depending on whether a person was able to attend the meeting, it was possible to judge their status and whether they had reached the center of power or not. Families who were unable to attend these events were often regarded as having fallen from grace. What kind of offers will come this time? Cyan's eyes murmured thus. Most council meetings revolve around the immediate imperial family attending. And the voices of the royal families were divided according to how many lawmakers supported them. Therefore, when the time came, many royal families made calls with good conditions to Cyan, a neutral faction that did not support any member of the royal family. Cyan has been using him for years and has made huge profits time and time again. After all, I only have to support this time and return to neutrality. He was like the fox who did not seek political neutrality but his well-being. He always put his well-being and survival first. If you were to fall under the control of one of the imperial families, there is a possibility that the imperial family will be purged as soon as they do not become emperors, and they might also be killed. This time Princess or Second Prince Hex seemed to be in a good position to bet. With that in mind, he began to ponder who he should support first. However, the name Alex did not exist in the things he was concerned about. Because you won't even be able to attend anyway. If I had started a few years earlier, I would have been able to make great profits. No matter how good he was, he couldn't gather support in such a short time and needed to gather at least 10. However, as far as he knew, Prince Alex did not have the support of even one member of his family. Well, that must be the limit of a person without any backing. As he muttered, Cyan sank deeply into the chair and turned towards the night view of the capital outside the window. Although it was midnight, the moon had already risen and the capital of the empire, Zenith, was shining brightly with the lights created by numerous buildings. Just like how the future of the empire will last forever, he was influenced by his family. The appearance of the city suddenly became distant. At this moment, Cyan's eyes looked at the imperial castle and were tinged with doubt. His house was close to the imperial castle where he was heading to, but he soon noticed that he was moving away. What? Where the hell are you going? Only Cyan realized that something was wrong and shouted at the horse-drawn carriage driver. However, the driver continued to drive silently, as if he hadn't heard the call. He knocked on the door and shouted, "Stop, wah!" Something fell from above and smashed the magic carriage Cyan was riding in to the point that even its original form was unrecognizable. Ugh! What is this? Cyan walked away from the wrecked carriage with a tired face because he almost died if he reacted a little late. He looked around frantically and found himself alone among the dense, dark trees. He had a squad of guards but there was no one around him. What about my guards? Cyan's forehead was covered in cold sweat and his senses were screaming at him to run away as soon as possible. At that time, knock, 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 knock. At the end of the empty place, silent footsteps began to be heard coming from the place where deep darkness existed. The sound of footsteps stimulates people's senses just by hearing them. With that, Cyan took a step back as he turned his gaze to the place where footsteps were heard and a human figure appearing in the darkness reflected in Cyan's eyes. Who? Cyan screamed in terror and intuitively took out a small jewel from his pockets and broke it without hesitation, betting everything on his survival. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 518, Terrifying Existence 2. Under the dark veil of night, a figure dashed across the street for his life. Finding himself in a life-threatening situation like never before, he cursed all generations of the madmen who attacked them. He headed towards the sparsely populated outskirts of the capital. That bastard, who the fuck is he? He shredded my body into rags and pieces. If it weren't for body modification, I would have surely died under his hands. I've never seen such a ferocious man before. Hopefully, I won't encounter him again. My stealth technique is absolute and I can escape under the gaze of the patrolling knight. After confirming that he was out of the danger zone, he took out a communication stone and connected it to one of the workshops near him. What a criticism. Yes, Harmon heard a hoarse voice and was about to whisper when he heard a noise that made him hide behind a bush. He looked around and saw several horse carriages hurriedly moving at high speed. Why are they making so many movements late at night? Maybe they were looking for someone. Wait, they're looking for me? But how is that possible? His back was soaked with cold as he thought about it. I'm miles away from that place. No, it could be something else. Since I caused a huge commotion by freezing the entire district, the guards might be concentrated in that area. It could be something else, sir. Sir, Harmon wiped the sweat off his head and asked, Suga, how's the situation there? Everything is as usual, sir. Is there an order? Yes, I'm on my way. Prepare me healing potions, orchid herbs, holy dew, and dark pills. Okay, sir. Suga, who received the order, frowned after cutting off the call. It's quite strange. All of these things are used to heal and nourish the body. Was I seriously injured? Never mind. I need to get things ready quickly, otherwise, he'll dig my grave. Suga was about to relay the order when the entire building shook, causing him to stagger back. Attack! We're under attack! We've been surrounded! Screams echoed throughout the place. A step later, mages appeared, took aim at the building, and began bombarding the place indiscriminately. Boom! 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 Under the fierce attacks, some legendary rankers managed to slip away. However, as soon as they stepped out of the building, a cruel fate awaited them. The entire area was engulfed in violet flames, closing off their escape route. Everything the fire touched burned and turned to ashes. Amidst the screams of panic and horror, a loud sound like thunder was heard. Since you dare to have thoughts of seizing the magic tower, you must prepare for the consequences. Bang! With a blinding flash, 5 escorts appeared around Cyan with stern expressions. It was a uniquely summoned special magic artifact that had such a high astronomical value that it could become a family heirloom, but there was no hesitation even though it used such a precious material. It was originally saved for a moment of life-threatening danger like this, and the most important thing to him was none other than his life. All 5 of them were at the mythic rank and one of them was at the peak mythic rank. Hey, kill that person, don't break his bones and bring him to me so I can question him. The summon escort warriors were wearing masks and upon receiving the order, they quickly rushed towards the black figure approaching them. Cyan's eyes finally flashed with relief and he was finally able to breathe. This was probably because the strength of the escort warriors that were the carefully selected knight surpassed most of the elite knights of the imperial castle. However, the next moment, a dull sound echoed through the dark forest. Stay! 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 Cyan's eyes widened in horror as he looked ahead. The head of the escort knight running in front instantly disappeared with a swift movement of the black figure. And before the escort's detached body could fall to the ground, Quack, the head of the escort who was running after him with the sound of something breaking, disappeared similarly to the previous one. The scene filled their minds with sadness and horror because they couldn't see the sequence of movements at all. The escorts were immersed in fear, and only after two lifeless bodies fell to the ground with a thud did they quickly react to swing their swords towards the black figure approaching them. Sword attacks pour out in all three directions and precisely target the vital points of the black shadow figure. Finally, the moment came when such sword strikes were about to pierce the vital points of the black form. The black figure slowly took a step forward. That moment. Fuck. A horrifying darkness surged out from the black figure. The darkness began to swallow all the swords and escorts that were being shot and tear them apart. The escort, who had his breath cut off with no chance to counterattack, fell to the ground. Knock. 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 At that instant, the black figure that had taken over all the escorts began to approach Cyan with a calm look, as if he had just killed some insignificant insects while taking a stroll. Who are you? Man, why the hell are you doing this? He didn't know if it was because his escorts had been killed in such a manner or because of fear of life. Cyan, his face dyed with fear, takes a step back and shouts at the approaching black figure. Why do you think you're doing this? At the moment, the moonlight that was hidden between the clouds shone along a muffled voice, revealing the face of the black silhouette that was slowly approaching him. Its footsteps were soft but seemed to announce the approaching storm, causing Cyan to feel a pressure like never before. Seeing the face, his body froze like a statue, causing him to ignore breathing for a moment. His eyes were stunned because he had seen the face. He knew the face very well, as the person before him had been a hot topic around the world recently. As if he had been struck by lightning, his brain seemed to stop working. "Ale. Your Majesty," a trembling voice escaped from his lips. It was a completely different atmosphere and aura than what he had seen many months ago. Cyan had seen this person very often. Before this, the man always had a warm and friendly aura around him that occasionally turned cold when provoked, but now everything seems different. As if it had become as dark as the night itself, the appearance of Alex approaching him wearing a black robe had a very strange and eerie feeling that made his skin crawl. "Your Highness, when was it that I provoked you? As far as I can remember, I have never done anything to harm you or cause you trouble, you know that." Alex opened his mouth as if he couldn't understand Cyan's reaction. The ancient countries that existed before the Empire, or even Kinley years ago, had a council and assembly system. Back in the day, when a legislator or a deputy committed acts of corruption, their eyes and tongue would be gouged out first. To pay for the sin of pretending not to see injustice and the sin of creating corruption with all kinds of cowardice, they would whip them, peel off their skin, and then sprinkle salt on their wounds. This process goes on for a long time, punishing the person slowly and steadily. Alex, who moved his face towards Cyan, looked at him with languid eyes, causing his body to tremble violently. And on top of that, all of this happened in full view of the public and family members. The goal was for everyone to learn a lesson from the terrible thing that had happened and not commit any kind of corruption or infidelity that would harm the interests of the Empire. Overwhelmed by Alex's dark, sunken eyes, Cyan trembled without saying a word. Accumulation of untold, illegal wealth. And although slavery has been abolished, you have several slaves to satisfy your perverted tastes, countless murders, dealings with a shady organization called Omen, running a drug business, and much more. Even if only a few are found, you will be sentenced to death. Alex slowly recited the information that the League of Shadows had gathered to him. Cyan felt as if Alex was reciting an imperial decree that issued a death sentence for him and his family. Cyan, who is also a duke, at this moment felt as helpless as an ant that can be easily trampled by the man before him. "Damn it, how do you get all this? Just how?" Cyan opened his mouth blankly, as if he couldn't believe the information coming out of Alex's mouth. Because everything was correct and there was nothing wrong. If this had gotten out, all of his hard work and reputation would have been drowned. Seeing Cyan's profuse figure, Alex smiled at him. "I'll give you a chance." The darkness began to rise and expand around Alex, filling the entire area with unease. Alex's figure suddenly became so terrifying that Cyan, who was at the legendary rank, wet his pants, unable to control his fear. A chance to save your life? The sight was akin to the devil offering a deal that no human could refuse by being sacrificed. Chapter 519, I'll give you a chance. The building where a battle took place last night. It had become a mess and was on the verge of collapse. Civilians were evacuated and thankfully there were casualties, though many of them were injured and some even suffered from frostbite. When the patrolling knights arrived, they found no one alive and most of the treasures were gone, making them wonder if it had been raided by the enemies of the head of the place. The knights were searching and investigating the place around, wondering what had happened here. They asked the people nearby, but none of them could find anything strange until a snowstorm hit the district. As the investigation was going on, passing beneath the night, two dark figures made their way to the top floor of the building. Hidden beneath everyone's sight, a figure stepped onto the top floor of the frozen secret branch. His eyes looked at the devastation and onslaught of the battle that was happening here. The roof was blown away and numerous small fractures and cracks were found on the frozen ground. His eyes were devoid of any emotion. However, Sasha, who had followed him for more than 10 years, knew how angry he was. What happened here? A weak question came out of her mouth. I snuck past the knights and followed their trail to find out more about the incident. I looked at the traces left by the attacks and tried to examine the mono left behind after the attack. It was done by an intruder. How many? 2. What? In response to the reply, she looked at Sasha as if asking her what she meant. Sasha lowered her head and opened her mouth to avoid looking into her eyes. Sir, I'm afraid this isn't the end of everything. Her expression changed for a moment. Don't tell me. Yes, sir, all the branches were attacked and the imperial family found a trace. The person who did this exposed all the evidence. What happened to the members of the other branches? She asked. All contact had been lost, and the missions that had been taken. Sasha felt a suffocating pressure and her lips trembled in fear. She couldn't look at him directly and merely shook her head in denial. He knew without a doubt. He understood what had happened. The location of the place must have been left out because of the disposal team failing to finish the tasks. These scum not only failed but also exposed our presence, anger. It was one word that filled his head at that moment. He hates to admit it, but this has been the biggest crisis they've faced so far. It was as if they'd been mocked to death. Being exposed was another thing, but what made it worse was that he didn't know the identity of the person involved. On top of that, they have lost the sacred treasure. A touch of winter. An artifact that they have stolen from the dragon clan recently, and it has the spirit of the ice dragon. You dare? You dare to play with fire? I will tear you apart and kill you, you bastard, along with a low-pitched roar flowing from the distorted mouth. The entire place begins to shake from the enormous tremor erupting from it. The building was unable to withstand this energy and gradually collapsed. Sir, stop this or we will alert the enemies, Sasha pleaded with an ashen expression. She immediately suppressed her anger. For now, instead of venting her anger, they had to find out who had twisted their plans first. Find out their identity, no matter what. If I see you again next time. In her eyes, the anger that had been suppressed began to boil again. A dark room with only a dim light emanating from a small lamp hanging in the middle. A man was tied there on a hard iron chair in the middle of the dark room. His face was covered with a black cloth. Zulu. Zulu. The sound of labored breathing was filtering through the cloth. Every time he took a breath, his body trembled to show how anxious he was. Where was he? What is he doing here? How much time had passed? He didn't know anything. When the rough breathing was about to reach its peak, the black cloth was pulled away and the man's face was revealed. A man with thick eyebrows has a strong overall impression. Axel Zart Luna, one of the 100 council members and head of the Zart family that ruled the northern part of the empire. Axel breathed rapidly and looked around with a sudden open vision. He looked at his handcuffed hands and the whip marks on his body. He, a mythical ranked warrior, had been reduced to such a state that surpassed his wildest dream. His eyes filled with tears as he thought about it. When he was returning home from work, his vision darkened and when he opened his eyes again, he was here. Scream. With an unpleasant sound, someone pulled an iron chair out of the darkness and placed an informer on it. His eyes caught the side of a knight with long, tied-up red hair gesturing to someone. It was Mag, a half-saint realm who had now taken over the League of Shadows after Raya. Mag's face with darkness on half of his face caused a strange fear in his heart. Mag looked at him and smiled contemptuously. wondering how the person sitting in the Duke's position could give in to lust. This person who had brought about his own death. What a pathetic bastard. What are you doing? Do you know who I am? Axel looked at the man and asked with a voice filled with anger and anxiety. Isn't that Axel's art? I'm sorry, we will release you immediately and give you an apology and compensation. A sweet and soft voice rang out and an orange-haired lady sat in front of him. Her curvy and voluptuous figure made him wonder who she was. She responded to him with a gentle smile and her eyes looked deeply at him. His consciousness, which had been blurry, suddenly jolted as he remembered her. You are Catherine, how dare you? Do you think it will be alright even if you are the 5th prince's wife? The knights of my family must be moving to find me now. It will only take them an hour to discover this. Even so, I wonder if you are still capable of smiling like you do now. Catherine chuckled and pulled her hair to the side. It probably won't happen. If the knights find this place, you will send them back yourself. What? Axel couldn't understand what Catherine was talking about. I think it would be better to read it once before having a conversation. Mag handed him a piece of paper which he took out from her arms with a leisurely movement. Axel's eyes, as he slowly read the contents of that paper, held no doubt and began to blush in astonishment. All the corruption and formal records he had been making since he was a teenager several decades ago were all written on paper. If even one of them was revealed to the world, his image of integrity and righteousness, which he had built up until then, would be ruined and he would be dragged into the imperial dungeon. However, she could still find a way to suppress it, but what was written on the last paper made her entire body tremble. Aren't you curious about what will happen to you, Axel, if this is revealed to the world? Catherine asked in a pleasant tone, yet her eyes glared at her. However, the smile on Catherine's expression disappeared and she spoke. You damned filthy mutt, how dare you wish anything on me? Do you think you are worthy of standing before me? Catherine's anger increased when she found out that this was the bastard who had made a deal with Amidon to imprison her and send her to be made into a slave by that moron. You're lucky it was me who came here, otherwise, if my husband had come, I would have torn your thing to pieces and then cut it into 1,000 pieces before your very eyes. The most important thing in the world to Axel was his honor and reputation, even if things were very different. Just thinking about the gruesome scene Catherine described made his legs go weak. His body was shaking so fiercely that he thought his little brother might not be able to stand up after such a traumatic incident. Since Catherine showed something that could completely destroy him, the reaction that followed afterward was also quite natural. What do you want from me? Axel asked in a weak voice and tilted his head. A thick arc line was drawn on Catherine's lips, causing her to smile with a sinister expression. Very well, I'll give you a chance to protect your life and that disgusting, filthy thing of yours. Beads of sweat formed on Mag's forehead as he watched the conversation between Catherine and Axel. And of course, Axel. What man on earth wouldn't be afraid when such a beautiful lady threatened him like that? Even Mag could feel his leg going weak. It seems that my lady had also been influenced by Master Alex and turned into a fierce demon towards the enemy. He gave Axel a pitiful look and prayed for his future descendant. Chapter 520, Words from His Heart. Bang! 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 The second Prince Hex walked down the hallway in the basement of his palace with an indifferent expression. Forgive us. On both sides of the hallway's glass walls, Hex was walking and people who had been grotesquely deformed by black magic and other forbidden experiments were screaming horribly. Hex's eyes did not move even at the slightest tremor. In order to maintain a cooperative relationship with such a being and increase Hex's magical abilities, such an experiment was an essential item. Your Majesty Hex. Hex's footsteps stopped as he sensed interference and looked back to see a hunchbacked corporeal figure crawling towards him. Hex's heart skipped a beat at the sight of such a deformed figure. What happened to him? I was almost killed. By whom? Don't you know? Hex hissed and panted heavily. Why did you come here? What if people are looking for you? All of our other bases have been attacked. Our positions have been exposed, so I must stay here to recover for the time being. He nodded and after being silent for a moment, he asked, how are you alive? For us to die, it is necessary to destroy something special in our body and I am sorry, I cannot say what that is. I understand, the day after tomorrow is the council, I know. Why? I think Prince Alex might be able to attend the meeting, the crawling figure said. How? Are there any lawmakers who support him? Hex's eyes tinged with doubt. At least 10 members needed the support for a prince to be able to attend. Maybe he'll succeed in recruiting the members of the neutral side. I've seen some movements from his side. While searching the bases, I saw some of his knights visiting the nobles. Haha. A sigh of exasperation left Hex's mouth at the man's words. How dare a bastard attend the meeting? There are a total of 8 members who claim to be neutral. Recruiting 10 members in such a short time was almost impossible, but Hex thought it might be possible for Alex. He didn't want to admit it, but so far Alex had accomplished everything that could be considered impossible. Why do you always come to me, even though you were nothing? You took away what I wanted and now you want to take away the throne that I had worked day and night for. Then it would be right to use our hand. Make sure you have all the information deadlocked until he leaves the basement. I wanted to see his surprised face at the meeting when he finds out what we've done. Hex ordered a servant guarding the door. Hex looked around and then pushed open the iron door that existed at the end of the hallway he had come to. The iron door opened with a strange sound and tremendous and enormous magic burst out. Without hesitation, he stepped through the iron door where magical energy was flowing. On the terrace at the top of the 5th prince's mansion, Alex looked at the moon illuminating the world with its soft light and thought about his plans again. Alex, at this moment, Catherine politely walked up behind him holding a box. All acquisitions have finished. Yes, Alex briefly responded to Catherine's words. And we managed to find this in one of the bases we destroyed. Alex took the box and opened it to find 2 darkness pills inside. In order for Alex to become stronger, he needed things with dark elements that this world lacks except for Omen. He could extract mana from corpses, but it was quite cumbersome and the amount needed was quite large. So, he needed to accumulate resources from the secret organization. Catherine observed Alex's face that seemed to be devoid of many emotions. It was certainly surprising that he was able to get the support of so many legislators to attend the council in 3 days. It was a great achievement, but there was very little enthusiasm in their eyes. It was too easy for Alex to find out what the other person values most and use it. If you value honor, you will cling to your reputation, and if survival is your top priority, you will cling to your lifelines. Crush a character completely, and if the person is afraid, you instill more fear in them. Catherine remembered what Alex said. What matters isn't the blackmail but the person doing it. What about the others? There hasn't been any movement on their part yet. It seems like they've probably gone mad from the preparations for the meeting. Is that so? Yes. Catherine's eyes were tinged with doubt at Alex's words. There didn't seem to be any interest in his eyes, as if everything seemed too cumbersome for him now. Catherine bit her lips, wondering how much pain he was feeling. Ria's kidnapping had left a wound in his heart, and his pride seemed to ache, and the wound seemed to have no signs of healing. Catherine walked over and sat on his lap, surprising Alex. She wrapped her hands around his neck and looked at Alex deeply. Who up? Alex looked up and saw Catherine's large, limpid eyes looking at him. I'm worried about you. It seems like you're becoming more inhuman with each passing day. Alex wanted to refute but couldn't. By the way, what did you do to that bastard? Alex muttered, trying to avoid the conversation. Oh. I left him alive. Why? Didn't I say to kill him? I have ways to use him, Catherine muttered, and then, thinking for a moment, she spoke in a weak, soft voice. Alex. When I heard about that bastard, do you know how angry I got? I thought that even if my husband is a pervert who tries to take advantage of me using his naughty hands, he has never gone too far. Have I become a gentleman? No, but I wanted to ask you something. You haven't done anything with us except Ria. From the way you always behave, I'm sure you could have pushed us away many times, but you never did, and don't tell me it's because you're waiting for our permission since you know we were already prepared. Alex's lips trembled a little. Alex's breathing quickened as he saw Catherine look over. Ava's familiar figure appeared in his eyes. However, he himself found it hard to accept that even though Ava and Catherine look the same, they are not. Because Catherine may have Ava's face, but in truth, her soul had been reincarnated as Ria, and the power of darkness she carried was inherited from the god of darkness of their world. And Ria's behavior was similar to Ava's, and Alex doubted this because of her way of speaking. Catherine's existence only added more confusion, otherwise he could have figured it out on his own, so he decided to put it on hold until he was sure. But after unlocking her memories and conversing with the god of death, he finally got confirmation that Ria is Ava, making him wonder if Ria knew about his past life and also knew about him as George. Curiosity was killing him, but the person who would answer him wasn't there. Alex let out a self-deprecating laugh, surprising himself, and said, "Fate is surely cruel." Chapter 521, Kinley State Council. It's because I didn't know whether I love you or not, Alex's words stunned Catherine for a moment. I've been with Raya for a long time, and from the moment I woke up, I felt quite familiar with her, and slowly but steadily, the more time we spent together, the more I fell in love with her. When I was with you guys, I always felt calm and at peace. I'm not going to lie to you when I say that I'm not attracted to your figure. You're beautiful in your own way, and you've been embedded with great proportions all over your body. I didn't fall in love with anyone at first sight, and the times we've spent were also quite less for me to fall madly in love with everyone. Alex's hand circled Catherine's waist and he rested his head on her bouncing chest. The soft, silky, elastic feeling that ran through his body was something he couldn't describe. It was heaven for a man, and he had thankfully been blessed with 5 pieces of paradise to enjoy. Catherine tried to suppress the moan that escaped her throat and asked with a blush on her face. Now, what do you feel about us? Catherine asks, smacking her lips. Alex looked up and could see the nervousness and anxiety in her eyes, and her hands seemed to shake as if her life depended on the next words spoken by Alex. We've been pretty busy the past few years and we barely get to spend time together properly. I wasn't sure. Alex paused for a moment. Until I watched Raya being taken away from me, I've been thinking about what my reaction would be if it were anyone else but Raya, and the answer is that I would feel the same. Each and every one of you has left a deep mark on my heart, and every day that I don't see you, I feel empty and hollow. I'm not saying this because I miss Raya, but because I can finally acknowledge my feelings and your existence in my life. The more I accept my feelings, the more afraid I am. Catherine, I'm afraid of parting with all of you. I'm afraid of being madly in love with you. The more I fall in love with all of you, the more I fear losing myself if something happens to all of you. Catherine's eyes moved and her heart seemed to fill with different emotions. Their marriage didn't happen by choice but by chance. However, the feelings she had for him couldn't be expressed in words. She didn't know when he appeared and started to grow. But for her, this man had become her world, one she could no longer live without. Then, Catherine, please take a look into my eyes and listen to my heartbeat. Alex took Catherine's hands and placed them over his heart. Alex raised his gaze filled with warmth and looked into Catherine's deep, silky eyes. His face flushed and he took a deep breath. Catalina, I love you. Catherine's heart, which was about to melt, suddenly froze as Alex's expression darkened. Her heart skipped a beat as she saw those terrifying beastly eyes with immense killing intent. Gulp. Catherine gulped and asked in fear, Alex, what happened? Did I do something wrong? No. Alex shook her head. The fish has caught up with its master and the goose has laid all her eggs. Since it had lost its courage, it was time to kill it. What are you talking about? Alex suddenly felt a bone-chilling cold, and only then did she snap out of her thoughts. Her head was covered in sweat as she finally remembered that she was in a very important phase of her life. Shit. I screwed up. Catalina, I'm so, Alex screamed in pain as Catherine bit her neck and snorted, fool, stupid. She stood up from Alex's lap and stomped on her legs, wanting to put a hole in her toes for ruining such a precious moment. However, the next moment, she felt a little depressed. It's my fault. I shouldn't have brought this up. I just wanted to comfort him, but I might have hurt him by making him remember the painful memories. She felt that the reason Alex was trying so hard, running here and there, was to stop thinking too much, so she decided to calm him down and, if possible, let him enjoy eating her. However, she wasn't able to bring herself to talk it out and just let the conversation flow. Huh. Sorry, I overreacted. Alex pretended to be hurt and muttered, alright, after I bring Raya back, I will formally propose to all of you and we will have a grand wedding. Catherine's eyes lit up and she gave Alex a faint smile. We will wait. People's Palace, the Emperor's residence. The largest conference room in such a popular place where many people have gathered there to greet each other. The number was over 100, and at first glance it might seem like a lot, but each and every one of them was indispensable to the National Assembly held here. It could be said that the people present here were the ones who moved the Kinley Empire. Ha. Long time no see. Arnold Ray's Rifford, among them, Nathan Hellas, the first heir of the Hellas clan, who was called the Master of Magic and one of the 5 highest powers in the Empire, opened his mouth at a brusque middle-aged man sitting beside him. Despite Hellas's greeting, the middle-aged man called Arnold only nodded his head and did not respond. The middle-aged man's frankness was already widespread. However, everyone knew how his daughter and grandson were beaten by Prince Alex, so they were all looking for an opportunity to rub salt into his wounds. However, none of them were brave enough. Nathan shrugged and said, it seems like the royal family hasn't arrived yet. Maybe it's the same as last time. He spoke with a sigh and looked at the conference room with those words, and his eyes stayed on the 9 seats and the largest chair beside him. Each seat had been reserved for each member of the imperial family years ago. However, until now only the first prince, second prince, and second princess were the only ones who had attended. Surprisingly, even though the 5th prince was disowned, his seat was always present here. So, unless there's some surprise, this meeting will be just like before, one of the nobles muttered. No, there was a 3-way battle before, but it will be 4-way. Oh yes, I remember the rumors about Prince Alex running for the throne. Gee. I'm not talking about him, I'm talking about Prince Shyan, he said and looked at Duke Razorford. Prince Alex might not be able to attend the meeting, Simon muttered. At that moment, Nathan, who was chatting happily, suddenly noticed something was amiss. I didn't find Duke Sion, where's he? Nathan's words aroused everyone's suspicions. Everyone knows that Sion belongs to the neutral side and has always attended the meeting, yet he sends his faction members to the imperial family through shady deals and makes a lot of profits. For a greedy person to be absent like that was completely unnatural. It was then that their muttering ceased as a loud announcement was heard. First Prince Sean is entering. A loud servant noise echoed in the conference room and caused everyone to stand up. Chapter 522, Kinley State Council 2. Through the open door, Sean entered with his usual smile, followed by a few of his men. There was a slight irritation in Sean's eyes as he walked to the seat while looking around the conference room. Hasn't anyone come so far? Why am I the one who always comes in first? Anyway, it was mostly Leia and I who attended the meeting, right? The seats of the other brothers and sisters were empty. Today will be the day that all of Kinley will be in shock. A smile appeared on his face as he wondered what the people's reaction would be when they found out that Alex had been raised as the crown prince. As Sean was thinking about this seriously, another loud voice was heard. First Princess, enter Leia von Stan. Leia walked in with her signature calm face and gently nodded to each of her followers. It wasn't long after Leia entered the conference room that others began to arrive. I hope I'm not late, Hex said quietly. We arrived on time as usual, however, he hasn't arrived yet, Ivine muttered in an arrogant tone. Second Prince Hex, fourth Prince Shyan, and second Princess Ivine entered one by one. Hex, who was the last to enter, apologized for being late, but he couldn't hide the tiredness on his face. It was Ivine's first time entering and she looked around with a sense of superiority. And as she sat down in her spot, she looked around, the conference rooms filled with joy. You didn't come. She looked at the empty seat in one of the corners. She knew that the owner of that seat would remain vacant until the end of the meeting. Stands Alex. How dare you attend the meeting without knowing the topic? She secretly laughed at her pathetic brother who couldn't even enter the place. You want to become crown prince but you can't even enter the council. What a pity. His lips curved upwards and he looked at Shyan who was scared to death after being beaten by Alex. Shyan's cowardly behavior disgusted her greatly, however, she was sure that she would get over it when Alex disappeared. Hex and Ivine always kept an eye on Alex's movements and tried to draw the group out when they realized that Alex had visited them. In this way, they managed to attract many assembly members. In that case, Alex was unable to attend the meeting because he was unable to receive the support of only 9 members. They have also placed Duke Sion on their side. Sion had 9 neutral members and promised to give 5 to Ivine while Sion would attend the meeting as a neutral. I wonder what kind of expression he will put on. Hex smiled even deeper, imagining that indifferent face of Alex. Did you think you were capable enough to drive me to despair? What joke? You're the one who's going to despair. I'll take everything that's precious to you. I'll always be ahead of you. Sean looked at Hex's wide smile and looked worriedly at Alex's empty seat. Now let's begin the meeting. It was the moment when a statement announced the start of the meeting. Rumble. The door to the conference room opened again. People looked towards the door. The 5th prince, Alex von Stan, is entering. The assistant's loud voice echoed in the conference room. At that moment, people's gazes turned from doubt to astonishment. To these people's ears, the sound of quiet footsteps ominously stimulated the depths of their hearts. Alex with a languid gaze slowly walked into the conference room. Everyone in the room, both the royal family and the aristocrats, stared at Alex entering with wide eyes without even standing up. They were too shocked to react. How the hell did he get into the conference room? And the shock reaction was most intense on the second prince, Hex's face. Wait, He broke the silence with a loud shout and looked at the assistant who was in charge of the number of people attending the meeting. "How did you get here? How the hell could you get in here?" Seeing his loud shout, Alex sneered. "Do you have a hole in your head? I enter here just like every single one of you. I'm not asking that." If it had been before, Hex would never have shown such an agitated state. However, after being beaten by Alex, does he have any face left to maintain? The servant shuddered and replied, tilting his head as blood seemed to leak out of his neck if he said the wrong thing. "Sir, His Majesty Alex with the support of more than 10 nobles is qualified to attend the National Assembly." "What? It can't be." "I mean, check again," Ivan said with a solemn expression. "I'm sure. There are 13 in total." Hex, who had a dazed expression on his face for a moment, turned his head and looked at the members who belonged to the neutral side before. The lawmakers quickly shook their heads back and forth, as if they weren't themselves. "Then who?" Hex's eyes were filled with confusion. Could it be that there were more neutral members that we didn't know about? Hex wondered and looked for Cyan, but he wasn't present there. Also, he couldn't understand how he managed to attract 13 members to his side. In that time. "There's something I want to ask you." Alex, who arrived right in front of Hex, opened his mouth with a cold voice. "Why did you think I would only attract the neutrals?" "What?" Hex's eyes widened when he saw Alex's cold eyes mocking him. "You should have taken good care of the people under your protection first." He realized something from those words and looked towards the conference room and turned his gaze towards the members who had supported him until now. Of them, 3 were unable to make eye contact with him. Hex was stunned to receive one of the biggest surprises of his life. Marcius Bernard, who was among them, even looked towards the city to escape his piercing gaze. "All of you, how can you betray me? You are all dirty dogs." Hex tried to calm himself down and swallowed his anger. "Even if you have them, it doesn't mean you're eligible," Hex said, trying to find an excuse. "You should ask them about it." Hex turned his attention towards the direction Alex was looking and frowned at Ivan's suffocating expression. "I didn't help him." The words got stuck in his throat and he stood up from his seat and muttered with a dazed expression, "Don't tell me." A scream of rage erupted from Ivan's mouth. Alex smiled and didn't speak any further and enjoyed his expression. Alex acted to attract neutral members during the day, but it was only during the night that he recruited members by treating them with a special gift. Who could refrain from receiving the gift? Sean also helped him by sending 2 additional members to help out. And with this, Alex managed to accomplish the feat he considered impossible. His only regret was that there was no betting, otherwise Alex might have destroyed his treasures. Alex had arrived early, but he was late so he could enjoy their expression after knowing this. Now, Alex turned his attention away from them as if there was nothing to see anymore. "We've seen enough drama here. Now, shall we begin the meeting?" "Shall we?" He smiled at the people gaping at him as if they were going to devour him in the next moment. Alex didn't flinch and faced their fierce gaze as he walked to his seat. "If this alone surprises you, I wonder what will happen next." Alex laughed and sat comfortably in his seat. Henry Eisenberg, the Prime Minister of Kinley, stepped up to the podium and muttered, "We will discuss the agendas later since the Emperor presented the proposals first. We have been ordered to discuss this first, and the first one is so important that it will decide the future of the Empire." As per the Emperor's instructions, wishing for the well-being of the Empire, the Emperor decided to appoint a successor to the throne. Henry began to read the imperial decree. After repeated observations and knowing the worth of each one, I, Kevin von Stan, the Emperor of Kinley, thinking of the best interest of my nation and my people, have hereby decided to bestow upon my 5th son the position of Crown Prince. The declaration was so shocking that it caused everyone to stand up from their seats and stare at the Prime Minister as if he had made the biggest joke of all. A deathly silence reigned for a moment, after which loud chatter of disbelief broke out from everyone and they all turned to Alex, who seemed to be smiling at them. Chapter 523, Kinley State Council 3. Most of the people attending the meeting had their gazes fixed on one spot. All gazes fell on Alex, who sat in his seat and watched the meeting with eyes that didn't know what he was thinking. They tried to study his expression, but it was as blank as a white sheet. From the moment he entered the conference room until now, people's eyes never left Alex, as if they were possessed by his charismatic demeanor. His posture, his bearing, his aura, his appearance, everything seemed to match the charisma that a ruler who rules over a vast empire must have. Most of the time one could guess who the next heir would be by the behavior of the princes, and currently, Alex's behavior screamed that there was no one more qualified than him to sit on the throne. Is this Prince Alex who they've seen before? It was a common thought in the minds of those who had seen Alex at least once in the past. In the past few months things had taken a drastic turn and were heading towards an unforeseeable future. With such an oppressive feeling, there was the aura of the ruler who looked down on everything from the boredom that emanated from it. On top of that, a body that is incomparably stronger than before, and the strange sinisterness that spreads through such a body. The feeling of fear gave them chills and terrified them to the point that even though they wanted to refute and find a reason to deny the Prime Minister's words, they couldn't. An invisible death sickle had been placed around their necks, warning them that if they said anything useless their heads would fly off. And it was a feeling so intense that none of them wanted to take the risk. How the hell could it change so much in such a short time? Alex looked at the faces of the people receiving his gazes and sneered inwardly. He had activated his death eyes, which were the result of a combination of the devil's eye and the eyes of truth. A single glance at him was enough to scare them to death. It seems that it scares them too much? Alex deactivated his eyes to give them some relief. The nobles snapped out of their trance and wondered if they had been under an illusion. We object. Finally, a few people stood up beneath Hex and Ivine with piercing gazes. How can Prince Alex be considered worthy? What are his achievements? What qualifications does he have to sit on the throne? The Prime Minister raised his glass and opened his lips to speak, but was interrupted by Alex. Since you've asked me, I think I should be the one to answer your question. The Prime Minister coughed and asked him to continue. I will attend to every single one of your complaints. Listen to me, you idiot. Alex shouted, standing up from his seat as he looked at the three people. How dare you call me an imbecile? If you're not an imbecile, then why did you react? There are many people around you, but you're the only one who reacted. Alex's words made many people laugh and look at that person with pity. Tell me your name. I am Count Zacharias. Alex stepped down from the stage. The noble stepped aside and listened to him. He stood in front of the Count and looked him straight in the eyes. Listen, Sir Count, a month ago, when Kinley's borders had been infested by some plague, you, the Count of the Empire, seemed to be sleeping in your bed and enjoying the wild nights, while it was I who came to the rescue of Kinley's troops, who were on the verge of being annihilated under a powerhouse of the Holy Kingdom. Since you are too ignorant to have any common sense, I, who can defeat the powerhouse of the Holy Kingdom, have to ask for your permission and achievements. I may not have much, but what I have achieved so far, everyone here knows best. Alex's aura erupted from his body, creating a surge of gusts that pushed everyone down. Alright. Alex's fierceness shocked them, and they looked at him in doubt and bewilderment, as many of them were at mythic rank but were unable to move an inch due to the pressure emanating from his body. With just a wave of his hand, this man suppressed the entire council. This not only shocked them, but also greatly alarmed them. Alex released the pressure and looked at the Prime Minister, who coughed softly, filled with embarrassment. Now, since everyone has witnessed Prince Alex's strength, let us move on to the next proposal put forward by Emperor Kevin. After a prince passes the succession ceremony, he needs to wander alone for a few months and accomplish something. However, the times are not in our favor. The allied forces of the demons and dark elves are pressing on the northern border. The corruption of the World Tree has put the elves in a defensive position, making it impossible for the Empire to obtain any help for them. Therefore, I propose that Prince Alex resolve the problems in the north by confronting the demons and re-establishing diplomatic ties with the elves. If Prince Alex manages to resolve all of this within the stipulated time of 2 months, then he will be appointed as the Crown Prince of Kinley and then the Emperor. And now, does anyone have any other opinions? The proposal placed a strong pressure on everyone. For many, it was as if their dreams were coming crashing down. All of them had been through a lot and sacrificed many things as they walked a tightrope to support a member of the imperial family. However, all of their efforts were in vain, and they received a slap in the face when they heard that Emperor Kevin wished to appoint Alex as the crown prince. Did he hate the 5th prince? Wasn't the 5th prince disgusting? Why would he do this? No one knew what kind of trick the emperor was up to. If they refuse, who knows? The emperor may ask them to perform the tasks that had been given to Alex, and failing to complete the task may mean death. While thinking about it, many wondered if the emperor was pushing Alex into the deadly pit, since the situation in the north is quite troublesome. And who knows if he will be able to return safely. We accept, we accept, we accept. Finally, swallowing their grievances, they agreed to the proposal while praying to God for Alex's failure. I want to object. It's too risky. Do you all understand the gravity of the situation? You're handing all the orders to a 22-year-old man and asking him to solve the problems that even the elves are concerned about. If something bad happens, who'll take responsibility? Leia voted against and voiced her opinion. They are trying to push him to the limit by giving him a near impossible task, but they forget that if Alex fails to handle the problems, Kinley would lose an important part to the demons and the losses would be much more severe than before when the demons could only occupy the western borders. Sean, what's your opinion? Because of Leia's opposition, people's gazes turned to First Prince Sean and the nobles supporting him. Sean gave Alex an inexplicable look and upon noticing Alex's expression, he sighed. I agree. Contrary to others' expectations that Sean might reject this, he immediately voted in favor of the people who wanted to see Alex's demise. You sure know how to create an opportunity and prove yourself. Sean shook his head with a bitter laugh. Did you know that beforehand? The fact that Alex was appointed as the crown prince was sure to be met with harsh criticism, and the resistance was too much to handle. However, they were forced to accept as they were almost certain that Alex would fail the assessment. However, Sean had no choice but to be happy for his little brother because if he won, he would get the empire as a trophy. Hex smiled looking at Alex from the corner of his eye. He could sense that Alex was planning something but it didn't matter. This time I will make sure to destroy you completely. From the depths of his eyes looking at Alex, he could imagine the scenario of Alex begging and pleading for his life. The game might have been started by Alex, but he would be the one having the last laugh. But Hex didn't know that at that moment. Alex was smiling deep in his heart. The fact that the 8th star that meant darkness was shining in those crimson eyes saw through the killing intent and forbidden magic hidden behind it. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.